Are we ready with all the tech? Ready to start? Oh, there's Andrew. Okay, thank you. All right. Welcome to the second of our dialogue sessions on the zero emission vehicle transition and how we can continue to make progress. I'm going to introduce Ethan Elkind, who is our facilitator for today's session.
Right. Thank you, Chair Randolph. Yeah, so as the chair mentioned, this is a second of 3 listening sessions that the Air Resources Board, along with the other agencies represented up here, and not all represented up here, other agencies are involved in helping put this together, are conducting to do some outreach with the public in response to the governor's executive order, in response to Congress nullifying the authority of California to set our zero-emission vehicle program mandates on the automakers to produce zero-emission vehicles. And so the purpose of this meeting is to help inform the ultimate state agency report to the governor on what steps the state can take in response. My name, as Chair Randolph mentioned, is Ethan Elkind. I work at UC Berkeley Law School. I direct our climate program at the Center for Law, Energy, and the Environment. And I'm here today to basically help moderate this discussion. It may be a bit of a dialogue. It's not a traditional kind of open comment session. There'll be questions posed to all of you after we hear some remarks from the panelists, and would love to hear your thoughts in response. We did have a meeting. Our first meeting was on Monday in Fresno. We have another meeting coming up next Thursday in Long Beach, and there's also an online meeting on July 29th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And so if you have comments today and you're not able to get them in for some reason, or they're not really on point for the facilitated dialogue that we're hoping to achieve today, I just want to let you know there are other opportunities to provide your input. So that online meeting is one, and then also you can submit written comments online if you go to the ZEV forward page on the California Resources Board website, and you can submit comments there as well. So I just want to let everyone know there's plenty of opportunities to provide input. I also want to note that we have a Zoom meeting going on for this session. So this is being recorded on Zoom. There's also note-taking happening from agency staff, so that's how we're going to capture your comments and observations today. And I also want to note that there is a Spanish language option. So if you need language assistance, it's up there on the slide now. So that will give you instructions for how to access the Spanish language translations. And ultimately, we hope to have a fruitful discussion. I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you. But first, we want to hear from our panelists, our agency representatives up here. So I'm going to reintroduce Air Resources Board Chair Leanne Randolph.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We're really here today because we think that California is best suited to figure out how to address California's critical clean air and climate policy needs. And with that in mind, as Ethan mentioned, Congress acted to repeal 3 specific waivers that on rules that California adopted. We think that action is illegal, and we have filed a lawsuit with wonderful representation from California's Attorney General. But in the meantime, we really need to be thinking about how we can move this market forward, how we can ensure that the technological solutions that are available on the market can continue to scale up and can continue to provide clean air and climate benefits and efficiency and better total cost of ownership, and to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. So this dialogue is really about hearing your ideas about how we can continue this progress. Are there things that we can do as administrative agencies? Are there things you would like to see the legislature do that would be helpful to continue this transition? And what are the ideas you have and the opportunities you see to make sure that California and the United States are not left behind in this global transition to cleaner and cleaner technology? We know clean energy is under attack, clean vehicles are under attack, and we need to keep making progress. So that means we have to be creative. We have to come up with some solutions that are doable and durable. And so I'm looking forward to this dialogue, and I really, really appreciate the fact that the other state agencies that we work very, very closely with on this transition are here to participate in this dialogue as well. So thank you for coming and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Chair Randolph. And on that note of other agencies, I want to introduce California State Transportation Agency Secretary Tokes Amashakin to provide some opening remarks as well.
Thank you, Ethan, and thank you, Chair Randolph. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to attend the conversation, this dialogue. Hopefully you can hear me pretty clearly here. I am hoping this morning to share a little bit of the perspective from CalSTA on a few buckets, if you will, four buckets of how we influence the direction that we're trying to go in as it relates to zero emission vehicles. But before I get to those four buckets, I want to thank Chair Randolph and all the other agencies that are up here for the partnership that we've had over the last several years in advancing this work. A lot of people, when they probably think of CalSTA and Caltrans, they probably think we are leading a lot of the transportation transition that we're going through, pretty independently, but it without a doubt is a partnership. Everybody from CARB to GoBiz, there's so many partners that we have, the CEC, their Hochschild, their whole team. We're very involved in a lot of the growth that we've seen over the last 6 or 7 years of the Newsom administration advance this work. I also want to commend the governor for his leadership. This new executive order 27-25, Chair Randolph and I were at a Silmar at a conference last week, and there was all the talk of what everybody wanted to talk about was the executive order. It was the main point of discussion, and it's not just here in the state. It's I would add across the country. People are looking to California to fill that void that now exists at a federal level. So this executive order can come at a better time in providing leadership on the zero emission vehicle transition that we're leading. So to the four things that I think CalSTA and its departments influence the most. Number one, I'd say is the fact that we are a major property owner in California. And when I say that, I think just based on a little rough math, we're probably when it comes to state property owners, we're probably the second largest property owner in California, next to state parks. And that's because of the vast highway system that we own, more than 50,000 miles of highway. But not just because of the highway itself, it's the right-of-way that accompanies it, that goes along it. All the park and ride facilities, the maintenance stations. You have the DMV and all its facilities. You have the CHP, which sometimes people can have public access to. So when you think about all the property we own and the potential to make sure there's zero emission vehicle infrastructure there to support the transition, there's vast potential and the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of acres in property that we own. So number one of the things that we can do is help with the infrastructure that's needed, the vast amount of property we own. Number two is the fact that we also happen to have the largest fleet in the entire state government. By my estimate, we have more than 15,000 vehicles. I'm probably underestimating the number of vehicles we have in the state. And as everybody in this room probably knows, there are regulations, there are executive orders that lean us into making that transition more by being leaders in the space. So, and I know that goes not just to state government, but that goes to all government as well, to start to make the transition. I believe this year we're supposed to be at 50%, if I'm not mistaken, of new purchases that we're making should be zero emission zero emission vehicles. So the fleet oversight that we have in California, CalSTA specifically, not the other departments and agencies, is vast. It's one of the largest, and I think we could continue to be that example in leading there. Number three is the funding leadership responsibility that we have, both from federal funding and state funding sources. When I say federal, I think most folks are probably aware. There's a program called NEVI, National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. That was a $5 billion program, of which California received nearly $400 million. From that program, we saw when this new administration came in Washington, they tried to stop the funding in February, and we got an injunction to continue to move forward just this month of July. And we continue to try to get that program obligated and implemented, and it's not been without a lot of challenges as of late. But that's just one area. NEVI, we also have another program, the CFI program, Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Program, that Caltrans also oversees, a $2.5 billion program nationally that we have responsibility for in California. So federal funding, significant, coming to California that CalSTA oversees in coordination, of course, with other organizations like the CEC. As far as state funding goes, our responsibility there, again, is vast, and we have a lot of potential. I know this discussion mostly here is going to focus on light-duty vehicles, but there are programs like the TIRCP, Transit and Inner-City Rail Capital Program, that funds a lot of transit projects. That program specifically supports the transition from a transit standpoint, buses, helping us support the transition there. There are programs like TCEP, too many acronyms. Trade Corridor Enhancement Program also supports freight. So there are quite a few funding-related responsibilities that we have from CalSTA. So a huge chunk of the way we are supporting this transition effort. And fourth and final on that list, on the list of items, is the regulatory responsibility we have. The DMV, and an organization that many of you probably have never even heard of, the New Motor Vehicle Board, NMVB, is also a part of CalSTA. They recently launched a program to help work with dealers across the state to encourage this transition that we're trying to make. And so they also bear a protection, if you will, responsibility for consumers as they're looking to purchase zero-emission vehicles. So DMV and New Motor Vehicle Board are the sort of regulatory arm, if you will, of CalSTA in supporting a lot of the transition here. So 4 buckets at a very high level. I look forward to a little bit of a back and forth if you have questions. And I really just want to hear a lot of ideas on how California can continue to move forward in this space. So thanks again for being here.
Thank you, Secretary Amshakin. And now I'd like to introduce the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development Chief Deputy Director Emily Desai.
Ethan, good morning, everyone. Chair, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to all of you for being here. You may know our organization better as GOBIS. We are the economic development arm for the state of California, responsible for job growth and business assistance. We work with companies to help them grow and expand and be successful here in California. And part of why we are at the table is, of course, because when we think about California's leadership in climate policy, we don't think about economic development being mutually exclusive to that. It's a core part of where California looks to lead in things like advancing the zero-emission vehicle market. So just like my colleagues, I'm here today to hear from all of you around actions that the state can take around the zero-emission vehicle executive order. GOBIS has a zero-emission vehicle market development office led in part by Heather Hickerson, who's there in the back and is really one of our experts. That office works to coordinate across state agencies, collaborate with local jurisdictions, and incorporate industry needs into the decision-making process to overcome barriers and address opportunities to advance the ZEV market here in California, because we do lead the nation in that industry. 1 in 4 cars sold in California is a zero-emission vehicle. There's 2.2 million ZEVs on the road sold to date, 6,000 zero-emission vehicle trucks and buses. But of course, it's not just how many of those vehicles are on the road. We're also home to 54 ZEV-related manufacturing companies, and there remains untapped potential in that space here in California. In February, the governor released the California Jobs First Economic Development Blueprint. That Jobs First Blueprint is the state's economic development strategy. And importantly, I want to note that that economic strategy is the first that California has had in many years. We looked at California across 13 different regions. We provided funding for those regions and capacity to help them identify within their communities where they saw strategies and opportunities to drive economic development within their communities, including identifying industries of priority that they felt, would help drive sustainable economic growth. I'm glad to say that of those 13 regions, 12 identified the clean economy as a priority sector. Of those 12, half specifically identified zero-emission vehicle technologies. So this is an incredible opportunity not only to work at the state level, but of course work hand in hand with our local partners to execute this strategy and to advance these efforts. We've come a very long way, but a lot of work remains to be done. The importance of maintaining our focus on the zero-emission vehicle market also has global implications. The Chinese industrial model, which combines government financial support, long-term planning, aggressive innovation, means that China has really, led in high-tech industries and things like zero-emission vehicles, et cetera. So there's a component here of global competitiveness that we need to continue to focus on as well. And California can really lead broader national efforts in that space as well. We know that here in Sacramento, part of the focus today is looking at light-duty zero-emission vehicles and incentives. We want to hear your ideas on the best opportunities to move forward, looking at how we can continue to grow the 2.2 million ZEVs on the road today to 5 million by 2030, 10 million beyond that. What can California do in the face of things like tariffs and the economic volatility that we know we're experiencing right now? While looking at how we can continue to transform and improve the daily lives for Californians and providing better access to these vehicles and to a sustainable and clean economy. So as the governor often says, the future happens here in California first. This is in large part due to the state's most important asset, which is the people, including those in this room. So we are glad to learn about your ideas, to learn about your recommendations, to think about how we can make recommendations to the governor strategically, deliberately, thoughtfully, to continue our leadership in this space. So thank you, Chair. And Ethan, I'm glad to turn it back over to you.
Right. Thank you, Emily. And now I want to introduce from the Department of Consumer Affairs, the Deputy Chief of the Bureau of Automotive Repair, Clayton Leake.
Thank you, Ethan. Good morning. My name is Clay Leake. I'm a Deputy Chief with the California Bureau of Automotive Repair. Very grateful to be here today to participate in this conversation. I'm also really proud to be representing both the Bureau and our parent department, the California Department of Consumer Affairs. Very briefly, the Department of Consumer Affairs oversees 36 boards and bureaus that issue 3.4 million licenses across 280 license types. DCA's mission is to provide outstanding support services, oversight, and innovative solutions to boards and bureaus that regulate California professionals and vocations, so that through this partnership, all Californians are informed, empowered, and protected. The Bureau of Automotive Repair is one of 36 boards and bureaus operating under the DCA umbrella. BAR's role is to regulate the automotive repair industry and administer the California Smog Check program. BAR's mission is to protect Californians through effective oversight of the automotive repair industry and the administration of the California Smog Check program. Very proud to be a partner in the state's zero emission vehicle adoption efforts. As a consumer protection agency and as the regulator of the automotive repair industry, we are here to pursue opportunities to enhance our commitment to consumer protection across the entire life cycle of zero-emission vehicles, including repair. We believe the adoption of zero-emission vehicles is absolutely critical to meeting California's air quality goals, and we believe that knowledge is power. Our goal is to amplify ZEV adoption messaging and outreach to stakeholders across the automotive repair marketplace. Ultimately, we believe this will help consumers and other stakeholders across the automotive repair marketplace make more informed decisions that ultimately lead to better outcomes for all Californians. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Clayton. So now we're going to launch into the facilitated part of the discussion. And actually, before I do, I just want to acknowledge that we do have Air Resources Board Executive Officer Dr. Stephen Cliff up here as well, who is mostly going to be in listening mode unless the dialogue compels him to provide some information. And for this part of the discussion, we're going to begin with a series of prompts. So we'll have a number of prompts throughout the day, and we'll be able to take some real-time written feedback from folks. And part of the thinking there is that not everyone's necessarily going to feel comfortable grabbing the microphone and verbalizing a comment. So we're going to have a mix of some written real-time feedback and then opportunities for comments via the microphone. And when we get to that portion of the discussion, just raise your hand. We have a couple assistants here who will be carrying around a microphone and can pass that to you. I do want to make sure that we sort of stay within our scope and have a sort of logical flow to this. So if you have a comment that is unrelated to the prompt and to the discussion that we're having in real time, I would ask that you hold on to that comment, and there may be opportunities later. That issue may come up sort of organically, and if not, as I mentioned, there's multiple opportunities to provide input, and if we have time at the end, we'll also leave an open space for sort of open comment period as well for anything that you weren't able to get to or we weren't able to cover and that you would like to weigh in on. Just a couple housekeeping notes before we launch into things. We do have a hard stop at 1 o'clock. I'll also plan to take a 15-minute break around 11 o'clock to give everyone a bit of a rest and opportunity to regroup. And those are basically the key items here, the key ground rules and key housekeeping points. Also, of course, a bathroom around the corner if you go out here and to the left. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I'm going to show here prompt. So this prompt is, what is the number one action that California can take to maintain momentum in the zero emission vehicle market? And if you hold up your camera, you can use the QR code. There's also a website link where you can respond in writing, or you can also text if you send your message to 22333. Either way, whatever works for you. And we'll give it a couple minutes here, see how the comments come in. They'll be just rolling comments, but we do just want to open up with the number one action that you think California can or potentially should take to maintain momentum in the zero-emission vehicle market, given the actions we've seen at the federal level. So I'm going to just pause and let folks get situated technologically, and we'll just pause for a moment, let folks do that. We'll see what the common themes are, and then we'll tee off the discussion from that. If you're figuring this out, because I see answers coming in, which is great. And I should also mention that one of the key themes for today's meeting is light-duty vehicles. We're not necessarily limiting the focus to that, but if you have comments that are particularly on point for light-duty vehicles, that is one of the topics we really want to explore in more depth in this meeting, as well as a subject of incentives, which we can focus on in a bit. But just wanted to flag that. Our first meeting in Fresno was more focused on agriculture and trucks, and our Long Beach meeting will have a focus on infrastructure. But again, nothing's out of bounds here, but just wanted to let you know that we are hoping to drill in to the topics of light-duty vehicles and incentives. I'm seeing a lot of comments here related to infrastructure and incentives, charging infrastructure specifically. So people can still continue to fill this out in writing. I'm not going to cut that off. It's available. So keep keep filling that out. But I did want to just open it up now for any verbal comments, given that we've got some themes coming in, incentives, infrastructure. If folks have any comments that they want to make verbally, something that maybe not able to write down here or want to clarify or disagree with something that's written. So if anyone wants to kick it off with a verbal comment on the number one action that the state could take. So I see a hand up here.
Good morning. My name is Greg Fishman. I'm the Senior Community Relations Officer for Sacramento Regional Transit, and I also serve currently as the SMUD Board President for the Sacramento Municipal Utility District here, so I'm wearing a couple of hats. From the SAC-RT standpoint, we are currently in a transition to some part of our bus fleet over to hydrogen, so more support for hydrogen is always going to be important for us in that respect. Yes, that's a heavy-duty comment, but it applies to light-duty as well. From the SMUD standpoint, we are seeing great success in converting over to electric vehicles and more vehicles, more charging stations. Where we still run into issues with private citizens is getting charging at their home when their current electrical panel will not support it. And so we're seeing that as a $3,000 to $5,000 additional cost for somebody, and it's a real barrier for many people who would like to make that transition to electric vehicles.
And any recommendations on what you'd like to see the state do to address that?
Well, it always comes down to money. So subsidies or some kind of program that assists, even if it's just aimed at low-income people that need the help most to make that transition for their personal vehicles. More public charging can also obviate that need to have it charged at home.
Great, thank you. So other comments, recommendations? Yeah, in the middle there.
Hi, my name is Rocky Fernandez. I'm the Senior Director of Policy for the Center for Sustainable Energy. CSE's analysis is that California is not going to meet our Advanced Clean Car 2 goals by 2035 unless we stand up another statewide general market EV incentive program similar to the Clean Vehicle Rebate Program, which, as you know, ended in 2023. CSE's analysis indicates that the annual flat EV incentive of $15,000 per vehicle beginning in 2025 would get us 75% of our way to the goal. And in order to get to 95% of new vehicle sales, California would need an annual flat incentive of approximately $30,000. Sounds like a lot of money, but a similar program was stood up in Norway, where EV adoption went from 22% to 92% over a 10-year period. So that is a lot of money, but we are in a cap and trade reauthorization cycle. So the sky's the limit for us, and we encourage you to do that as the number one action. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Other comments?
I appreciate your optimism.
Hello, this is Angelina Rahimi. I am the founder of Aura Planning, which is a for-profit agency. The reason that I'm explaining that is that all of our projects are related to increasing adoption of EVs for low-income and disadvantaged communities. And the issue that I see is that when it comes to innovation in technology, CARB is very open to bringing for-profit agencies to that conversation. But when it comes to innovation in adoption and helping low-income communities, it's always open only and only to nonprofit agencies. And I think this is not fair. You should be open to great ideas, and it doesn't matter where it comes from. Thank you.
Thank you. Other thoughts, comments?
Thanks. Good morning. Tom Van Heeke, Senior Policy Advisor at Rivian Automotive. I'll make maybe two quick comments. One is, while the ACC2 waiver, of course, is being contested, the state has not lost all of its regulatory authority, and we encourage CARB to consider exploring how it can use regulations, perhaps through tailpipe standards, to continue sending a very important market signal to the automotive industry that investment in cleaner technology is still absolutely imperative. Bearing in mind that our industry is on 5-10 year product planning life cycles. So sending that signal now and continuing to send it is really important if we want to see the product in the marketplace in 2030, 2035, and beyond. And second, I think in the intervening period, a recommitment to broadly accessible purchase incentives that are really compelling to consumers to drive as much volume into the market as soon as possible is, I think, worthy of consideration. I think it's just really important. We want to seed the used market so we can get ZEV volume out more broadly. But in the meantime, we need to reconsider how we can get as many people into ZEVs as possible across the entire spectrum of incomes and vehicle segment types. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, Dr. Cliff.
Thanks. Just want to note we are going to have a workshop on ACC August, September, this fall. So really hope you participate. I'm sure you're on the list for that. Thank you.
And I know on the used market question, I know Clayton, you had a question about the repair process and the need for scaling up technicians to be able to make those repairs and make sure that we've got a robust market for used vehicles. So folks have comments along those lines, that would be useful as well. So be thinking about that, and we'll take this gentleman's comment. Yes.
Thank you, folks. Thank you for your leadership this morning. Appreciate you opening the dialogue, and most certainly appreciate the governor's executive order as well. Ali Cooper, program manager with EV Guide. EV Guide currently works with CARB-funded programs across the state to launch low-cost, affordable, and reliable community car share programs. And really want to commend CARB in the state for putting, last round, about $35 million on the streets to launch these initiatives across California. Here is one of the primary challenges that community car share programs face that are funded by the state. The unattainable and unaffordable insurance, the skyrocketing insurance cost is hampering the ability to accelerate these programs. And so in real time, what we're looking at is support from CARB and state agencies to identify some sort of pooled insurance program that community-based car share programs, both the nonprofits and those run by local governments, could sort of lean into to help control costs for insurance. So if we're talking about accelerating and moving the number of vehicles, particularly through these demonstration programs, we've got to get our hands around the insurance car costs. So exploring some sort of pooled insurance scheme for community car share programs, I think would be hugely beneficial.
Thank you. Secretary Amashakin, I think you wanted to.
Yes, I just wanted to sort of piggyback on this theme that seems to be reoccurring here about low income, specifically the lady. Sorry, I didn't get your name, but I think you started us off down this path talking about the fact that we probably spend, in your opinion, too much time supporting nonprofits and not individuals directly who may be making a purchase. I think that was your comment. And I just want to make a note, and I want to hear if you have any ideas, but the CVRP program that the two folks to my left saw, the last round of, I think the initial round probably wasn't as focused on income levels as far as specifically lower income, but the last round that just ended very much had targets in there for lower income, that set a target for lower income people in our state. So we started to make that transition more and more, especially in this last round. I don't know if you have any specifics to add about CVRP, and I specifically focused on making sure that people with a certain income were able to reach the program. But I think it's an important point you're making nonetheless. I guess is what I want to say. I want to highlight the fact that you're making that point. I think we can continue to do more. If we're going to be able to get to the goals that were mentioned by my colleagues, the 5 million by 2030, equity is going to be a huge part of this transition. Not just the affluent and folks who can afford, a $50,000 ZEV, but the lower income brackets have to be able to afford it as well. But I don't know if you want to add more on some ideas you may have about how to target lower income people in California. And I don't know if my colleagues want to say anything about CVRP, but if not.
Great. As you mentioned, CVRP has been sunsetted, but there is our Driving Clean Assistance Program that funds vehicle purchases for lower income folks and also provides loan assistance and other services. And air districts also have programs that that assist in supporting low income folks to get zero emission vehicles. And I do think that's kind of a critical component of the work that we're doing. In this process, I've sort of also heard questions about leasing, for instance, because there was federal support for leasing vehicles, and I've heard a lot of interest in leasing programs, used car programs, another opportunity to reach different aspects of vehicle buyers. 70% of vehicle sales in California are used as opposed to new. So it's really important to think about ways to support that market. And I've also heard input about thinking about companies that are headquartered in California and ways to support companies like that that are still headquartered in California. So I think there's I think the question of incentives is going to be really important. And it's not only going to be how do you structure programs, but also how you fund programs. And as folks have mentioned, the state is looking at, the legislative leadership and the governor have all indicated support for reauthorizing cap and trade, which has been a source of incentives over the years. Low carbon fuel standard also has incentives for both infrastructure development, but also funding for vehicles that are focused on the medium and heavy duty market. And by the way, if folks want to say something about heavy duty, please feel free. This is kind of a light duty focus, but I know if there are folks here who are participating in that, in the medium and heavy duty market, I don't want you to feel like you can't speak up. So I do encourage that. So there's a lot of, I think today's conversation, I'm expecting to hear a lot of feedback on incentive programs and how they can best be structured. So looking forward to hearing more thoughts about that. So
Sorry, I just wanted to add that one idea that we implemented for low-income communities, and it was very successful, is a shared mobility. And actually, CARB CMO program funded the needs assessment for that, but then through Air Quality Management District, the SMUD, and others, we were able to build the first mobility hub in a disadvantaged community. This way, we have infrastructure in the disadvantaged community, and we are also providing shared mobility options for the community members. We found that very helpful solution. Thank you.
Appreciate that follow-up. And I think on the point around incentives, any ideas around ways to provide revenue to fund those incentives, perhaps beyond cap and trade and low carbon fuel standard? Yeah.
Thanks. Bill McGavern with Coalition for Clean Air. I wanted to weigh in on the incentive questions that are being discussed. And Secretary Omashak, thank you for talking about the equity parts. We think that when it comes to light duty incentives, obviously there's a limited amount of money. That money should be spent only to help low and moderate income Californians make this transition to zero emission transportation. For those with greater means, actually ZEVs are already a great buy. And if we had enough money to go around, maybe we could talk about a broad market incentive, but let's face it, the funds are limited. So we really need to target them to the people who need them the most. I think we can grow that pot of money that's available. First of all, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund can be enhanced by reforming cap and trade so that we're not giving away allowances to some of the big polluters like oil companies. We should be getting that money and spending it to hasten this transition. Similarly, the low carbon fuel standard could be overhauled to emphasize more
the electrification part of our transition, because that's what we're talking about here, is getting to zero emissions, whether that be battery electric or fuel cell electric. We're asking the legislature to dedicate a portion of the greenhouse gas reduction funds to zero emission vehicles and infrastructure, which so far have not enjoyed that status that a number of other programs have enjoyed. And then in terms of specific programs, some of the equity programs include, as has been mentioned, Clean Cars for All. And we're asking CARB to implement the language in the recently passed budget, which seeks to continue the district programs as well as the statewide program. So we want to make sure that all of those are funded and sustained. And has been mentioned, equity programs also include mobility options where people don't necessarily have to own a car to take advantage of zero emission transportation. So we want to make sure those car sharing programs are funded. And also, let's talk about bikes, e-bikes or conventional bikes. Those should be funded by the state for low and moderate income Californians. We have a program that is already very popular and oversubscribed, needs more funding, and CalSTA can help by prioritizing the infrastructure that makes it safe and convenient for people to bike or to walk to where they're going. So those are some ideas that we have in the incentive area. There's also a sort of incentive/regulation which would involve putting a higher charge on the more polluting vehicles and then using that funding to provide incentives for people who are buying the zero emission vehicles. That can be applied both in light duty and in heavy duty. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that comment. Also, I know we have some people participating by Zoom. We're not taking any verbal comments by Zoom, but you can respond to the poll if you're on Zoom as well. Other thoughts on this theme of incentives and top actions the state can do? I see a hand up here, and then we'll go to the person in the back.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Sivright from California Construction and Industrial Materials Association. We produce the construction materials for the built environment. Our material producers welcome budget-friendly and high-performing equipment that is clean. Because we operate in the communities and we build communities that we take a great deal of pride in. In relation to the #1 action, I'd like to make a recommendation for CARB to further advance support and funding of technology development and demonstration programs. But programs that could be considered to be more similarly modeled like U.S. Department of Energy's Clean Communities and Cities program. They not only fund a significant amount of development and demonstration programs, but they do a lot of grassroots assessment and address of the technology's barriers of entry. Program's been around since the 90s for several years, federally, or I guess just nationally as well as statewide. There wasn't a requirement for this advanced technology equipment to be purchased. I mean, the equipment really had to sell itself, and that was the whole focus of the U.S. Department of Energy's Clean Cities and Communities program. And as a result, I mean, there's a lot of great success as far as what they were able to do without a regulation. Thank you.
Thank you. And we had a hand up towards the back there. Yeah.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Scott Cox on behalf of the Electric Vehicle Charging Association, which is 24 members who lead in the charging space. My thanks to the members of the board and CARB and the governor for acting quickly to protect the energy transition. Our members have floated acceleration of infrastructure deployment as the most critical issue. This can look like streamlined permitting, which can take the form of fully implementing AB 970 and working with the CPUC to drive energization targets. These are the two biggest barriers to frontline deployment. Outside of that, predictable, transparent funding cycles and modernization of our grant processes would go a long way in ensuring this infrastructure remains subsidized stably. In addition, we would also like to recommend that we continue to protect the low carbon fuel standard and inject confidence back into the market to restore credit prices in a way that they better support infrastructure. And coupled with that, cap and invest and its full reauthorization and prioritization of transportation spending priorities would also do a ton of work in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see if the panelists have anything in response to this infrastructure question. This is a big theme that came up.
Yes, infrastructure, is absolutely critical, and we continue to work closely with our sister agencies. As we all know, there's a lot of challenges just in terms of continuing to get infrastructure built. But I will say it has grown exponentially over the last several years. And as Secretary Omashakin mentioned, we still have NEVI funding that is dedicated to this purpose that is still going to be moving out the door. So we will absolutely continue to prioritize that and look for ways to move faster. We work very closely with GoBiz in looking at opportunities, as was mentioned, thinking about how local permitting can move faster, thinking about how we can ensure that the growth of zero emission vehicles continues to be factored into the work that the CEC and the CPUC do in terms of demand forecasting and infrastructure deployment, in continuing to work with both public and investor-owned utilities to get them to speed up their energization and interconnection processes. All of these factors are really critical and really important, and we will continue to devote time, energy, and resources to that work. And of course, the Energy Commission continues to have solicitations for their support for zero emission infrastructure deployment, funded, both through NEVI, but through other programs that continue to have funding and those energize applications available and to ensure that deployment. So we recognize that it is a challenge, particularly in the medium and heavy duty space. And so we will continue to work to incentivize those deployments both through our market programs and through other programs. If anybody else has anything to add, happy to cede the mic.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just say briefly that I really appreciate the comments on permitting. I know that our ZEV Market Development Office is really thinking a lot about that. And as I talked about with the communities under the Jobs First strategy that have identified zero emission vehicle opportunities for their communities, that provides, an existing ecosystem to continue to work with those local officials, be it recognizing and amplifying, best in practice that we're seeing, but also continuing to address barriers and thinking creatively about how we can overcome some of the things that we know are challenges in scaling more infrastructure deployment. So absolutely focused on that, and certainly a core pillar of some of the recommendations that GoBiz is submitting through this process. So thank you.
I'll just add briefly, we continue to work on reliability of the charging infrastructure, and the Energy Commission has a rulemaking on that and continues to work on strategies to ensure that we have better uptime going forward. There's a lot of, as you know, those of you who have light duty electric vehicles, it can be very frustrating to pull into a charging station and see 1, 2, 3 units out. And we continue to work on holding companies accountable to ensure that they are making sure that the uptime is better and that they are really improving the reliability of those charging stations.
I'll just briefly add as well to the infrastructure comment that the reason why the NEVI program is so important, not that we don't have a lot of state funding that's been set aside to support this transition. The reason why the NEVI program is so important is because federal government, specifically the Biden administration, set it up that on public highways, so on federal roads and state roads, that we set up charges within a 50-mile distance from one another on our highway system, so that to the point that Chair Randolph was making about, the concerns that people have when, whether you're light duty vehicle or heavy duty vehicle, the concerns that people have when you're thinking, well, I'm about to run out of juice and I don't have a sense of how far away I am. If we're able to implement that program, and it's nearly a $400 million program that we're trying to get the money out of the door, it will help sort of alleviate, at least to a certain degree, not completely, some of those concerns if we implement it based on the plan that we sent forward to the last administration. So every 50-mile sort of radius is the goal of charging infrastructure, our public highway system. So very important point about the.
So other comments in the back.
Don't want to jump in front of somebody. Are you?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize.
Is it
we
okay
already-
if I go and then I'll hand
I think we had someone in the, oh, yeah, go ahead. If you're in the gentleman in the t-shirt, if you
yeah,
have the
if you want to
microphone.
respond to
Okay, hi, Jen Califoot from the California Energy Commission. Apologies that Commissioner Skinner couldn't join this listening session today, but I did want to respond to some of the comments on infrastructure and let people know that we're here also in the room in case there are questions for the CEC. According to CEC data, we have about 180,000 public or shared private EV charging stations in California right now, and at least 700,000 level 2 chargers at people's homes. These chargers are supporting, close to 2 million EVs on the road, as we've talked about already. But in the next several years, by 2030, we're expecting at least 6.5 million EVs on the road. So we need to scale the charging infrastructure tremendously, get hundreds of thousands more chargers out there. As Chair Randolph mentioned, we do have solicitations open. We are seeking applicants to come in and help us get this charging infrastructure out. Our solicitations are tremendously oversubscribed. We are getting way more applications than we currently have the budget to fund. And so this is really going to be a public-private effort to get the charging infrastructure out there. And it also means that we really have to look at what has been working, what has not been working, where do we need these chargers, how do we prioritize? So any comments from the room really on, priority sectors, especially in the light duty area that we should be prioritizing would be very welcomed from the CEC perspective as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah. Other comments?
Hi, Josh Miller with the ICCT, International Council on Clean Transportation. I'm a program director there. So I know the conversation is starting to go in the infrastructure direction, but I wanted to take the opportunity to respond to some of the questions that the panelists have raised about incentives. So how do we make sure that the ZEV program can be reinstated in a way that is fiscally responsible? How do we find the funding for it? And also, how do we provide access to low and moderate income buyers to ZEVs? So high level point is I think this is a unique opportunity for California to implement a really robust, innovative fiscal incentive that incorporates polluter pays principles. So this is a key way to make sure that this program is actually self-sustaining and is revenue neutral. Some principles that have been applied in other countries are, for example, a bonus malus or a fee-bait program that basically establishes a certain cut point at which there's no fee or rebate. And above that point, there would be a fee on new vehicle purchases. And below that point would be rebates. And then you have to define the kind of function that makes the program work. There's a unique opportunity here in that California is really pushing the envelope on truly zero tailpipe emission vehicles. So the question of whether plug-in hybrids will get incentives or whether hybrids will get incentives, I think a program to be really fiscally responsible and effective could target the rebates toward battery electric and fuel cell vehicles, especially battery electric, which are more cost effective. Eligibility criteria are really important for containing the cost of the program and increasing its effectiveness. So many examples from the Clean Vehicle Rebate Program, but income eligibility, manufacturer suggested retail price caps, and making sure that the program funds are being targeted toward those who it's really going to make a difference for in terms of new vehicle purchase. But when we think about the new vehicle market, it tends to be moderate to higher income buyers. So to the question of how do we continue to enhance access to low and moderate income buyers, this is where the used vehicle market, as Chair Randolph mentioned, is 70% of vehicle sales in California. Coming up with incentives for used vehicles that are really targeted and effective, that's going to be a really key priority area to increase access. One way to do that is actually doing what the Driving Clean Assistance Program does in a way, but really targeting it toward tying used vehicle purchase incentives to scrappage. Because older vehicles contribute more than half of the pollution, but less than 20% of the vehicles on the road. That number is constantly changing, and I think getting more disproportionate as new vehicle sales are cleaner and cleaner. So coming up with a program that really ties getting rid of your older vehicle to purchasing a used BEV. We're seeing a lot more BEVs on the market at relatively affordable price points. I think there's a lot of incentive to accelerate the repurchase of new BEV buyers. Just one last step before closing is for new BEV buyers, 85% are saying they're only going to buy a BEV in the future. So for people who have a 3 or 4-year-old vehicle that they're looking to offload and upgrade to their next purchase, that's a very natural way to basically push those BEVs to low and moderate income buyers. Love to talk about charging infrastructure and other things, but we'll get to that later.
Thank you for those comments, ideas. Just want to see if the panelists have anything in response. All right, well, we'll make note of that. And I saw some of the comments as well echo the idea of a sort of a polluter pays revenue stream. Other, comments there in the back.
Hello, Michelle Canales with Union of Concerned Scientists. I just wanted to share in addition in terms of incentives. We believe one action the state could take is developing and deploying a purchase incentive for the purchase of lower cost electric vehicles, which would encourage manufacturers to bring more affordable electric vehicles to the state. Targeting only lower cost vehicles would maximize the effectiveness of such a program and reduce costs compared to the broadly applicable incentives. In addition, in terms of funding, this, in addition to GGRF, it could be funded by establishing new fees on luxury, high-cost, gasoline-only vehicles, or potentially by a fee on non-carbob gas. Regarding Clean Cars for All and equity-based incentive programs, we also wanted to add the state should continue to invest in these programs and ensure that programs are not interrupted at the regional level by lack of funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Or comment there in the middle back.
Hi, my name is Pamela Jeffers, and I'm here representing a logging company in the more rural part. So I'd like to see somebody eventually address the heavy commercial vehicles and the safety issues with regard to the batteries and the weight load, as well as disposal issues. We work in a lot of rural areas of the state where it's not feasible to have a mobile charging unit. With regard to logging, it's a safety issue as well. The batteries can weigh up to 10,000 pounds alone, which adds a lot of safety issues and feasibility issues as well. So I'd like to hear that addressed. I see a lot about the incentives and charging stations. It's not really addressing anything rurally.
Yeah, so just to follow up with you on that, any suggestions, solutions, steps you'd like to see the state take to address the challenges you're seeing in the rural areas?
I just think they need to go a lot farther. There's a lot of mandates out there now, but they're not followed up with anything that addresses feasibility, like with the logging trucks, for instance. Having a mobile unit come out, and when you have a whole fleet of commercial vehicles out in the woods, there's no feasibility there, but yet they're mandating that it happen. So there's a lot of issues surrounding that that are basically being ignored.
Okay, so we had a gentleman with a hand up in the middle, in the back. Please.
Add briefly to the comment about safety and batteries. This is something that we're starting to pay attention to. I'm not sure this really necessarily supports the question or the comment that you were making, but we're starting to think more and more about how to address both heavy batteries in heavy-duty vehicles and the transporting of lithium batteries on our highway system. We've had three major incidents in the last year where either a heavy-duty vehicle that was lithium-based either flipped over, caught on fire, or a vehicle that was transporting lithium batteries caught on fire and essentially just completely shut down the freeway system. And I'll be pretty frank, I think our response was not up to par, if I could just put it in those terms. And part of the reason why is because we've never really dealt with how to address a situation like that before. I mean, we're used to, typical tractor trailer flips over, catches on fire, engine, diesel fuel, and we know how to deal with that. But a much heavier battery that if you move in a wrong way could even cause bigger issues or, in a different way that we're not prepared for was a big part of our concern. So I'm not sure that necessarily addresses your comment or if you had a specific question there, but this is something that we are preparing more and more for. I can't give you specifics, but we're thinking about this even regionally. So our neighboring states, we're coming together because some of the batteries are being transported across state, and the vehicles are going across state. For example, Nevada, one of the cases, the vehicle was coming out of on I-15 in Nevada. So anyway, this is something we're paying a lot of attention to. A good comment, but I'm not sure if you had a specific question there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, yeah, comment in the back.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Simón Gutiérrez y yo hablo como empresario. Es la primera vez que vengo aquí. Es la primera vez que vengo aquí, pues yo miro que son puras como instituciones, pero nadie habla del lado de los empresarios, para ver cómo podemos mejorar. Yo tengo 14 camiones de carga y cada camión cuesta $200,000. ¿Qué necesito yo para convertir toda mi flotilla a autos eléctricos? Para mí sería bien difícil si no tengo una ayuda. Ya con el ZEV, yo tenía camiones que no tenían ZEV. Entonces, ahorita cambié 13 camiones a ZEV System y me costó mucho dinero. Entonces tuve que pagar, nos dieron un crédito como de $5,000 y yo tuve que gastar como $80,000 en cada camión. Entonces, si ahorita del ZEV cambio a los de la batería, entonces hay que enfocarnos a los que, como yo como empresario, para cambiar todos mis vehículos, yo necesitaría como $2 millones. Entonces, yo estoy de acuerdo que para cambiar los camiones haya como un recurso, pero también estoy dispuesto a que nos ayude el gobierno y después de que ya tenga mi flotilla cambiada a eléctrico, pagar un impuesto, para que de ahí salga dinero para seguir financiando a los empresarios de equipo pesado. Porque imagínense, todos hablan de los vehículos chiquitos, pues sí, pero ¿quién va a llevar la comida? Yo hago albercas y yo vendo concreto. Entonces yo hago que la economía se mueva como casas, edificios y todo eso. Entonces yo necesito dar un servicio, pero ocupo sacar dinero para cambiar mi flotilla, porque todos están diciendo que sí, esto y el otro, y nos enfocamos en el problema de las personas que queremos hacer el cambio, pero también aportar con un impuesto a pagar. Entonces, aquí nos tenemos que enfocar en que todo, es que no hallo la palabra, que todo funcione, pero yo quisiera que se enfocaran también. Yo sé que hay gente de bajos recursos, sí, pero como empresario, yo doy trabajo a muchas personas, como a unas 10, 15 familias. Esas familias pueden comprar 1 o 2 carros. Entonces yo estando bien, ellos están bien y así es como podemos a hacer el cambio, porque nomás dar opiniones que pone este y ya, pues sí, pues todos tenemos ideas, pero hay que ver cómo lo podemos incrementar para que podamos nosotros hacer el cambio y que nos pongan un impuesto. Estoy de acuerdo a eso, pagar un impuesto más y de ahí pues ayudar a los más chiquitos, se podría decir. No sé si me expliqué bien, pero pues nunca he hablado, es la primera vez que hablo.
Simón, ¿va?
Sí.
Good morning. My name is Simon Gutierrez, and I'm here to speak as a business person. It's the first time I ever come here. This is the first time I come here. And I see a lot of agencies and NGOs here, but I don't hear anybody speaking up for small business owners to see how we as business owners can improve. I own 14 heavy-duty trucks. Each truck costs $200,000. So in order for me to convert that whole fleet to zero emissions, to especially battery electric, would be hugely difficult if I don't get some sort of help. First, I had older trucks that didn't have DEV. So I retrofitted 13 trucks to the DEV system, and that cost a lot of money. And we got a little bit of support. But I still had to spend $80,000 out of pocket to retrofit these trucks. So now I have to switch them from DEV to battery electric. Then in order to change all of those vehicles as a business person, I would need maybe $2 million to do it. So I agree, we need to do something, you know, and I know there's a lot of focus on light vehicles on today's conversation, but as a business owner, I'd be willing, if there was some sort of support, so I can change over to battery electric, to be able to pay some sort of tax or fee after the fact, after I have these electric vehicles, so I can give that money back so that we can continue circulating that funding, right? Because again, we're focusing on light duty vehicles, but you know, who's going to bring your food and do all those other things? You need trucks for that. I work on concrete, I build pools, homes, buildings. And so I need to be able to provide that service, but I need to be profitable in order to be able to change over my fleet. And I hear a lot of comments about a lot of different things, but we're not focusing on those of us who are willing to make that change and who can contribute back, like I said, through a tax after the fact or some sort of fee. So we need to ensure that all of us have, you know, a way to, you know, be a part of this. I, for example, would like you to understand, because I know there's a lot being said about low-income people, and it's fine, we need to focus on them, but I, as a business owner, I also employ people. I employ 10, 15 families, and maybe they can buy a couple of vehicles, right? And the better off I am, the more I can pay them, and the better off they'll be, right? So we need to focus on everybody. Now, this is the first time I ever make a public comment, so I don't know how clearly I'm conveying this. But again, you know, we're willing to make that change. And, you know, if we can get some support, we're willing to give it back through some sort of tax or fee so that we can help people down the road. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that comment. I want to see if anyone on the panel has anything to add in response.
Yeah, I think that's a really important topic because, you know, we know that heavy duty vehicles do impact communities greatly. And, you know, we know we've spoken to a lot of business owners that really do want cleaner vehicles, both cleaner combustion and zero emission vehicles. We do have an incentive program called HVIP, which helps fund zero emission vehicles. And we really want to continue to support the deployment of heavy duty vehicles because you get a lot of bang for your buck in terms of air quality improvements. So CARB did adopt what's called the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation, requiring larger fleets, 50 and over, and high priority fleets to transition to zero emission. Unfortunately, we did not get a waiver for that rule, so that rule is not currently in effect, but we still have these incentive programs that will help support that transition. So we can have staff, reach out to you and share a little bit more information about those programs. In addition, the low carbon fuel standard, as we mentioned earlier, will help fund heavy duty vehicles as well. And that program is currently in the process of being developed. And so hopefully we can roll that out in the next several months. So we will be able to provide even more incentives for heavy duty vehicle deployment and transitioning, helping smaller fleets in particular transition. It can be challenging to kind of start that process, but once it gets going, we know that the total cost of ownership for heavy duty vehicles is favorable given the fuel costs and operational costs that those vehicles are confronted with. So we really do want to continue to encourage that deployment.
And it's wonderful to hear from small business owners of other folks representing fleets also want to talk about their experiences, good or bad, support that they would need. That feedback would also be welcome as well. So on the subject of top actions the state can take, we've talked a fair amount about incentives, infrastructure. Happy to take more comments on those, or if there's other actions people would like to recommend. We have a question here or comment in the front.
Good morning. David Rentschler, City of Fairfield Fleet Division Manager. I know quite a few of you from many meetings. We talk about infrastructure and we think of chargers. However, I'd like the state to start thinking about infrastructure on a bigger level. So our city of Fairfield has light duty, medium duty, heavy duty, zero emission. We also have off-road zero emission as well. What we're facing in infrastructure now is repair facilities. Our repair facility, we have two repair facilities that are city-owned in the city that we work on city vehicles, and neither one have been determined safe for zero emission, high voltage vehicles. So now we're looking at trying to build a new 4-bay oversized facility for the large battery electric buses we have, as well as the off-road and light and medium duty vehicles. And we're looking at $20.5 million with no incentives to help us with that infrastructure. And so I'd like to say we should be looking at infrastructure, everything that's needed. We have over 2 million zero emission cars on the road, looking to go to 5. We have several thousand zero emission trucks. We have lots of buses. And so those vehicles need repair. And we need to work on workforce development for our technicians so that we get them training. We spend a lot of time, a lot of money going through NFPA arc flash training and other training, because typical technicians are used to working on 24, maybe 48 volts. Now we're talking 400 volts with the Ford Lightning. We're talking 800 volts with the Gillig battery electric buses. So that's heavy duty industrial electrician voltage. Normal electrician 120, 240, industrial electrician 480, maybe 600. But now technicians, diesel mechanics are having to learn how to work on 800 volts. And we want them to be safe. We don't want anyone getting hurt. And so if we can think about that as well when we talk about infrastructure, please think about the whole picture. And when we talk about workforce development, we should think about the safety of the technicians that are going to work on these. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really appreciate that comment. I had a conversation a couple days ago along those lines, sort of the investments that public fleets need to make in their repair facilities. And I think it's an excellent point and something we can think about as we're, working on infrastructure, to your point, like sort of broadening the definition of infrastructure. I also wanted to make sure, another commenter brought up hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. I think it's important to note that there continues to be a focus on that and that infrastructure, particularly in the heavy duty space. The ARCHES program that the governor's Office of Business and Economic Development has worked on, we are still optimistic that we will continue to have federal funding to scale up renewable hydrogen in the state of California to support hydrogen fuel cell heavy duty vehicles. And so we continue to work with our sister agencies in the hopes of scaling that up as well. There are several, both public and private fleets that are running hydrogen vehicles, buses and trucks in the state, and we want to continue to support that market.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for the comment regarding repair facilities and workforce development, something I'm particularly interested in. I guess the question back is specifically with regard to workforce development, you know, what specific actions, or are there any ideas around what the state could do to kind of supercharge some of those efforts and advance and making sure we have a safe repair marketplace for these vehicles, right? That's an important part of the life cycle.
I agree. Just briefly, that's a good flag for us. I'll tell you that the program that I mentioned early on, the TIRCP program, Transit Intercity Capital Rail Program, it funds vertical infrastructure as well, so like a transit station, for example. But I think you make a good point about if you're trying to do a retrofit project for high voltage, to make sure that it's something that's eligible. And I'm not particularly sure. It's something that I'm definitely going to double check. I'm making note of that for transit centers or stations rather, if that's something that they want to do, can they apply for funds specifically for that to do that type of work beyond just purchasing ZEV buses and charging stations, but the repair infrastructure specifically. So good flag. Thank you.
Gentleman in the back has been waiting, and then we'll go to the woman in front. Yes.
Thank you so much. I'm going to sit, if that's okay. So I'm Brett Zuner with the Foundation for California Community Colleges. We work really closely with BAR on our smog check referee program. Hi. And we also are sub-administrator of the Replace a Ride program, the regional CC4A, and then also of the statewide CC4A. And then we also administered some grants to colleges, community colleges for ZEV advancement in workforce on behalf of CARB, and then did Ideal Communities Project with CEC. So lots of experience in this space, and that predates me even. And just as thinking about, so I had a comment, but then some ideas in response to what people have said. So for the workforce part, I'm glad CEC is in the room because Advanced Transportation Logistics Program definitely should continue to fund that, restart the funding. That was very successful. And I think it speaks to a comment, my main comment, which is about certainty and multi-year funding. So bringing that program back because it was very successful. And in terms of, this was just idea I had as people were talking, was for used ZEVs, something the programs could offer that is not tied to necessarily giving them money for the vehicle, but giving them money for repairs or for checkups on the vehicle or some sort of incentivization of the vehicle. We're kind of doing that with a zero emission assurance program, but that's more about like replacing the battery. But if people who get used EVs could get credit at BAR affiliated facilities and at community colleges to take their vehicle in at no cost to get just a tune-up, checkup, something like that, that could incentivize people who are weary about getting used EVs and also reduce the cost. Similar to healthcare, it's better to pay for preventative care than to wait till something gives out. And in terms of the funding for the businesses, I'm not sure if we've done a revolving fund. Many years ago, I was at EPA Region 9 doing drinking water, and SIDWA has their state revolving fund for infrastructure projects, and that was very successful even in times of low interest rates. And now, given where interest rates are at now, I would assume that small businesses don't have access to capital loans and things. So if the state could, I know HVIP is successful, but possibly upfronting the money through a loan, low interest, and then pegging their interest payments to savings. So if they didn't save any money, they shouldn't pay any interest. But if they did save a lot of money, they should pay some of that interest back into the program, and that's how the revolving funds work. And aligning those programs like HVIP with Energize, so the funding application should not be happening at different times. People should be able to apply for the charger with the vehicle, have the deliveries, and everything makes sense. Because otherwise they're going to be out a charger, out a vehicle, and out money. And then my main comment was about rural EV incentives. So I'm glad the person brought up rural communities. I have been hearing a lot of mostly NGOs refer to the regional CC4As. I just want to remind everyone that statewide CC4A is maybe a misnomer. It is regional in the sense that it serves rural regions. So we don't have any statewide CC4A. We only have regional CC4As, and there's 5 air district regions and then the outskirt region, but they're all regional. And to say that we should pull money from a regional CC or from the quote unquote statewide CC4A to pay the regional CC4A and then create, infighting and issues and a scarcity mindset doesn't really help anyone. And so I think, CARB did a beautiful job, and so did CEC, at putting multi-year funding ahead. So, we put 3 5-year funding plans out, gave DCAP 3 years to spend down the money. And after 1 year, there's talks about removing the money because we don't see results. But in rural communities, we know you have to spend more time and energy to invest in these communities. And it takes a lot of time to build relationships in areas where we've never offered a scrap and replace program. It's the first time we've ever done it. And we have to have so many conversations, and really thoughtful ones, honest ones, to get people on board. And it does take time. And I trust the leadership here, and I think from what I've seen and what's been said, I think I trust the leadership. But just to remind the audience and others that we should be working together and securing more funding for these programs, and not trying to deobligate or divvy up funding and creating issues that way. And there are ways that we can address some of the air district programs, like who still use AGI, because we do know that there are people who go through programs who have very low AGI, but high income, or high wealth, low income. And giving CARB greater flexibility to address these issues, not just in a funding plan cycle on an annual basis, I think would give that team a lot of more capacity and capability, because we have to be nimble, but we also have to remain committed to what we said we were going to do. So it is a difficult balance, but I'm hopeful, and we're doing a lot. So I think California will remain a leader. So thank you.
Thoughts and response from the panel? I want to make sure the woman down here has a chance to ask her questions. I've been very patient. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Michelle Levinson with the World Resources Institute. We're a nonprofit sustainable development think tank, and we have been working a lot in California because of the leadership the state has taken around school bus electrification. And through that lens, I just wanted to echo, Brett, I think's comment, and then also our business person's comment around the medium and heavy duty side. And I know buses don't totally fit into one of these sessions, so I'm kind of squeezing it in the incentive category here. And I think the point I want to make is that the incentive programs have been amazing and essential. And if the state is looking to mature our market, it's time for us to support financing tools that are integrated with our incentives in a really comprehensive way. So that folks don't have to go to different places, and also in recognition of the total cost of ownership reality, so that our constrained revenue situation is not so binding for us. So the incentives that we still need to give out can go further if we, as a state, support the support the maturation of financing, and that includes also support around some of the insurance products that are necessary, which we heard about earlier, and are especially, I'm more familiar with the medium and heavy duty market. So I'll say they're definitely a challenge in the medium and heavy duty market. And the State Department of Insurance is thinking about that. But the state really has I think it's behooves the state to go beyond this incentive thinking and really think as a system about what we can do to meet what a sustainable market would look like, rather than still kind of seeding a mature, novel market. And to that end, my last point is that, we still have bold ambition, and we should use taxpayer funds wisely, and that includes taking some risk appropriately and not being bound by like, in order to go bold, you have to take risk. Otherwise, we won't get there. And so we need the state to own that in the programs.
Thank you. Comment there on the side.
Great. Good morning. I'm Mars Wu from the Green Line Institute. We're a climate, racial, and economic equity organization working to address the harmful legacies of redlining in communities of color across the state. Just want to expand on the workforce development conversation. We really see this as an important component of creating economically resilient and long-lasting emissions reductions. We want to see state and local workforce efforts be coordinated across the agencies. And we're also talking about workforce development, both in terms of, I think, what the gentleman uplifted earlier, developing California's clean energy economy. I think this stretches across ZEV auto manufacturing, ZEV repair and servicing, battery manufacturing, charger installation maintenance, transit operations and maintenance, building decarb, kind of a range of things that include and go beyond light duty in this conversation. We want to see that economy be developed through training and education programs, and also make sure that high road labor standards are being incorporated to guarantee that these are high quality jobs with good wages and benefits that we're creating. In talking about workforce development, this is also referring to transitioning workers away from high polluting sectors and the oil and gas industry, and providing that crucial support and reskilling to ensure that workers are getting into new jobs, again, with comparable wages and benefits and high standards. We also really see workforce development having important equity benefits in terms of creating economic opportunities for low-income and disadvantaged communities to be included in the green economy. And just on that, really want to emphasize and uplift some comments that were brought up earlier around making sure that we are targeting our limited state dollars in an intentional way to directly benefit priority populations, including who we've been talking about, low-income communities of color, rural and tribal communities, renters, residents of multi-unit housing. There's a measurable lag in EV adoption in these communities related to both high cost of ZEVs and also barriers in charging access. And that was the CVRP came up earlier. That had been one of our concerns, that it was not targeted enough towards low-income communities who wouldn't be able to otherwise access a ZEV without incentives or financing assistance. Also want to uplift on this theme of equity. In developing program guidelines itself, it's really crucial to have community input and inclusion informing every step of the process, ensuring that they don't continue to be left behind in the ZEV transition, and also that concerns are being listened to. Just real quick, environmental justice communities have been voicing concerns about hydrogen. Happy to kind of expand on that in written comments later to not take up more time. But, we've talked about California leading the nation on ZEVs, and California also needs to continue championing equity as a priority in how we invest our public dollars. The last thing I just want to mention for this section is uplifting a comment previously around protecting and utilizing CARB's regulatory authority. One tool that we think is really valuable is the usage of indirect source rules to regulate large sources of pollution. I know that's a little bit separate from light duty, but on light duty specific, there's a range of regulations such as tire efficiency standards that could be explored to reduce pollution. So I'll end my comments there. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Number of themes that we've heard a lot today: workforce, targeting, incentives, infrastructure needs. Yes, comment here in the front. Do we have a
Greg Fishman again with Sacramento Regional Transit. Just want to respond to several of the comments that we've had. We do have a federal grant that we believe is still in place to start making the transition to hydrogen fuel cell buses for a portion of our fleet. We've looked at this pretty closely, and to do electric vehicle only would require us to buy about a bus and a half or maybe a bus and 2/3 to keep as many vehicles running on the road as we need while they're recharging. And there's also, in addition to the range and recharging times, there's also weight issues. And so that's why hydrogen is a better alternative for some of those. We do have a workforce development component with that project. So we're developing a hydrogen fueling system and bus maintenance facility at McClellan, the former Air Force Base, where we already own some property, and that's where we fuel and store some of our current natural gas fleet. So we're changing that over to a hydrogen station, in the process now of choosing a hydrogen supplier, either on-site production or trucked in potentially. We're not sure yet. The workforce development aspect, we're working with American River College on that. And so somebody was here from the community college organization. They're a great resource, and they have the flexibility to adapt curricula to meet those needs relatively quickly. And so we're looking forward to actually getting that up and running. The timing is important. So the facility has to be there, the workforce development program has to be there, and the jobs have to be there all at the right time. And so making sure that that happens at the right time is very important. Given that, and the other thing I wanted to mention is, as committed as we are to transitioning to zero carbon vehicles for SAC-RT, we're still unclear exactly how long it's going to take to do that. And so we would appreciate some flexibility in the ICT program and the requirements that it has on when we buy and when we have to meet those requirements. Again, we might be able to make those deadlines. We're just not sure. And again, it's not only a matter of finding the funding, it's actually finding enough buses to buy of the right type that are available when we need them. And so we're working towards those goals, but it's still unclear that we're going to be able to make those goals. And then the last thing I would leave you with is, and this applies to the low income and multifamily issues around providing zero emission vehicles. We're working with the Air Quality Management District here in Sacramento and SMUD on mobility hubs, sometimes located at our light rail stations where we have additional parking that is currently unused or underused. And so when you put in car share programs, public charging, e-bikes and e-scooters at those facilities, you have a pretty good system that provides additional mobility for people. It kind of helps meet that first mile, last mile challenge that is still there. And then the other thing, and this is a little bit off the topic, but we're also working on developing transit-oriented development, housing, and in some cases retail or other uses at those light rail stations where we have additional property. So to the extent that these agencies can foster additional transit-oriented development, we just got some regulatory relief, some CEQA relief through the legislature. We're looking forward to applying that where it can be applied. But those combinations of uses come together and start making mobility a lot easier for people, reducing vehicle miles traveled, reducing emissions, which is the ultimate goal. Thank you.
Microphone in the back, and then we'll go to the front here. Yeah.
Thanks very much. My name is Atid Kimmelman. I'm with the NRDC, Natural Resource Defense Council. Thanks for the opportunity today and the work that you're doing. Just trying to add on to what's been said, a lot of which we support. We need a whole of government approach to address the multiple barriers to electrification and reducing emissions in the transportation sector. One thing that I saw written but haven't heard about much, which is less in the purview of folks at the table, but thinking about that whole of government approach, is rate reform to ensure affordable rates for beneficial electrification equipment, like the infrastructure for EVs, but other equipment as well, to decarbonize, using low-cost sub-metering solutions and other solutions that can help lay the groundwork for VGI and the future of the grid. So really thinking about that to ensure that we have rates that will support the transition, because if rates continue to rise, the economics doesn't work out for a lot of the fleets and other owners of these vehicles. Another issue that's come up that I just want to reinforce is kind of innovative financing that leverages public dollars to draw in private investment, and particularly in this interest rate environment. So there's a number of potential options there, but really want to highlight that as well. And then one last issue that I haven't heard as much about as well is, shifting funding from highway expansion and other VMT increasing investments in the state towards transit and EV infrastructure. I think this is something we're starting to see, but we actually have a lot of resources that we should be redirecting towards the goals that the state is seeking to promote here, and we want to work with you to encourage those efforts.
Thank you. Any thoughts and response from the panel? Okay, let's see. There, gentleman, left hand side.
Hello, my name is George Suarez. I'm the VP of Engineering and Workforce Development at Aura Planning. I just want to second and maybe third the importance of workforce development programs in electric vehicles and electrification. There was a comment earlier about uptime of EV chargers, and there's so many opportunities for training young adults to actually pursue those jobs. You don't need to be an electrician to maintain and operate equipment that is de-energized. So that's a big opportunity when it comes to working on electric vehicles. Earlier this year, I presented with Brett at a CARB event talking about our CEC-funded ZEV seed program, where we graduated 70 people to install level 2 chargers and work on a 400-volt battery pack. They learned how to don all their PPE and understand all of the intricacies of electric vehicles. And so if you guys have any questions about that, about our challenges, I'd be happy to talk about that more. But yeah, it's very important. So thank you for all the comments on that.
Thank you. Yeah, question right there, or comment right there.
Good morning. My name is Michael Giddens. I'm the president of the California Bus Association. Also operate a private fleet of 25 buses. The California Bus Association represents the private motor coach and intercity bus in California. You heard from our colleague and fellow board member Jasmine at the Fresno meeting, so I won't rehash everything that she said, but just to, in this discussion about infrastructure and incentives. First off, on the incentives, the HVIP program only covers about 20% of the cost of a comparable motor coach. And when you say comparable of the motor coach, the way they look is about as much as you can compare. The vehicles look the same. Unfortunately, the range is about 20% of diesel vehicle. They carry less luggage, considerably less luggage, and then as well, less people. Our industry represents about 1% of the total heavy-duty vehicles on the road. So it's a pretty small industry. Nationwide, we carry about as many passengers as the commercial domestic air carriers. So HVIP, unfortunately, doesn't really, it's not enough to cover that cost. A new diesel motor coach costs around $650,000 to $700,000, and the electric equivalent is about double that, between 1.2 and 1.5 million. And again, equivalent in the way the vehicle looks, but not in the way that we can operate the vehicle. Infrastructure, as far as charging, we've had members that actually have tried to get infrastructure to their facilities, and utilities to say it's not possible. Again, and then all the cost of that is there are some incentives, but they don't cover enough of what it costs. The other, if it's there, I did the length of time it takes. I personally tried to get some charging infrastructure at our facility, and the utility is quoting 18 to 24 months just to start the project. So definitely challenges around that, and so that's some concerns we have with the infrastructure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I did see a comment here about the focus on light duty. So we appreciate all comments on, all sorts of range of stuff related to the scope of what can the state do. But if people do have ideas for action, number one, steps that they would like to see the state take on light duty specifically, that would be useful. We've got about probably another 10 minutes or so before we break. And so I also want to just say if anyone has a comment related to something we haven't yet touched on, I just do want to kind of open it up in terms of top priority steps for the state to take. So let's see, a hand in the back.
Hi, good morning. Rashina Mohabir with California Environmental Voters. First, I just want to extend my appreciation to CARB and other agencies present on the panel today for their leadership on this issue. I'm just going to reiterate some of the points that were made to ensure Californians don't get left behind in the ZEV transition. I think we really have to target our limited funding to middle and lower income communities and improve access, especially to communities that face a disproportionate air quality burden from transportation emissions. We really want to create the right environment to get buy-in for EV adoption. We want people to feel certain that they're making the right decision when they for buying and charging an electric vehicle. And to do so, this means giving the right price signals to purchase new or used vehicles, as the chair mentioned, because used vehicles make up such a large portion of car sales in the state. So this means thoroughly funding incentive programs that are in really high demand, like Clean Cars for All and DCAP, reassurance that public charging infrastructure can be made available, especially in disadvantaged communities, or that we can retrofit existing multifamily housing so people have the option to charge at home. And lastly, as the gentleman from NRDC mentioned, we need to be sending the price signal via affordable electricity. With vehicle electrification, people won't be bought in unless the legislature and CARB's sister agencies are making the right policy decisions to help drive rates down. Just especially in regard to disadvantaged communities, residents of these communities experience more frequent and longer power outages than others do, especially during extreme weather events. And this could create a disincentive to purchase an EV. So overall, just moving the needle on clean, safe, and especially reliable and affordable energy. Thank you.
And we got a hand up here, and then one more over there.
Hi, this is Suzanne from CalSEMA again. I'm here with focus on medium, heavy duty, and heavy duty vehicles. And the number one action I just want to reiterate is just propelling the innovation and advancement of the technology. Specific to the Advanced Clean Fleet Regulation, CARB repealed the high priority and drayage fleet requirements, but the public fleet requirements are in place. They're still in place. I propose that CARB consider developing a specific initiative or program to use the experiences of the public fleets to inform design and development of the technology. Regardless of what rulemaking may come and its time frame, the further along the technology is, it's going to propel out any ZEV initiative that the state has. And there's also going to be less pushback in any respect. I mean, that is not a poke. It's just to make a case that using this information is just going to provide more data-driven decision-making, and it's just going to improve scalability, which is what we all want. All right, thank you.
And we had a comment there on the left-hand side.
Good morning, Ada Welder with Earth Justice. On the topic of incentives and sort of targeting our funding, we certainly agree with our colleagues from Cal Enviro Voters on ensuring that we're supporting, lower income and middle income families. But in addition to that, there's a couple of existing programs that could use reform to help better target dollars towards ZEV programs. The low carbon fuel standard, for instance, in 2022, almost 80% of LCFS credits went to non-ZEV fuels like biofuels and biogas. Taking environmental justice groups offered concrete suggestions for how to reform the LCFS, and we encourage CARB staff to take another look at those. We go into greater detail on all of these in our written comments. In addition, Cap and Trade is another program that supports the fossil fuel industry through loopholes and giveaways. There's specific changes that CARB or the legislature could take, such as eliminating free allowances for the oil and gas industry and eliminating offsets from the Cap and Trade program. According to one analysis from the Resource for the Future, found that offsets were eliminated from Cap and Trade program from 2031 onward. Cumulative additional revenues from 2025 through 2030 would total approximately $1.6 billion in a scenario with low allowance demand and $4.2 billion in a scenario with high allowance demand, which they found to be more likely. So we really encourage taking another look at those, and on a more sort of medium and heavy duty front, really support the use of indirect source rules and the ability for CARB to implement statewide indirect source rules. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments here? All right, we've got another hand up over here in the front.
Thanks. Bill McGavin with Coalition for Clean Air. Earlier, I made some recommendations about incentives. These comments focus on regulatory standards. First of all, we agree that CARB should embark on developing a new advanced clean cars regulation to require the manufacturers to sell escalating percentages of ZEVs in California. Should perhaps be tied to bidirectional charging capability to make sure that we're assisting the grid as well as vehicles. Secondly, CARB has authority without needing federal approval for setting fleet standards for in-use vehicles. This is particularly important actually in heavy duty, where it's time to start requiring the retirement of older diesel vehicles when they reach the end of their useful lives. In light duty, CARB could also be setting standards for large fleets to transition to ZEVs. The one area right now where we have those is the clean mile standards for ride-hailing vehicles, but those I think need to be better implemented and enforced. And also at the CEC, we would like to see the Commission finish its rulemaking on replacement tire efficiency standards, because whether we're talking about ZEVs or combustion vehicles, we will save money and fuel and reduce emissions by having more efficient tires when they need to be replaced. And as was mentioned earlier, we also would like to see the charger reliability standards put in place so that people can be confident that when they get to a charging station, they actually will be able to charge their vehicle. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to start to wrap up here on this number one action prompt. We'll have a number of series of prompts after the break, and I'll just preview them now, which is just to get you thinking about it. You'll have an opportunity to weigh in at the time, but we're going to ask you about types of programs to meet air quality and climate targets that you'd like to see state agencies assess and implement. Specific prompt around incentives. What other particularly non-financial incentives could encourage more adoption of zero-emission vehicles, and principles to ensure that as we move forward on zero-emission vehicle program design, that we don't leave any Californians behind. So we're going to be focusing on specific programs, incentives, and equity, as well as sort of an open floor after we come back from the break. I know Secretary Amashakin has to leave after the break. We'll have a colleague from his agency sitting in with us, but Mr. Secretary, if you have any closing comments you want to share before we lose you here.
Sure. Just briefly, look, from the transportation agency standpoint, I mentioned those four key areas that the role that we play. The governor has asked all the state departments and agencies to work with CARB and Cal EPA and the leadership role that they have to come up with some additional actions and recommendations on what we can do, and that's a big part of why you're here. I just want you to know that from our agency, we're completely in. We're all in on supporting this transition. Again, I mentioned the significant role that I think we play, mainly in the infrastructure component. We're going to continue to do all we can do in the remaining tenure, the remaining period that Governor Newsom has in office to support this transition and lean on the federal agencies as well to help implement the programs that are being challenged, like the NEVI program and CFI program. So we'll continue to do all we can do to help support this transition and work with my partners, our partner organizations that are sitting up here as well. So thank you, Ethan, for leading, facilitating this session, and Chair Hochschild, Mr. Executive Director, thank you as well for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. And with that, we will take a 15-minute break. So we'll reconvene at 11:08 a.m. That's 11:08. We'll see you back in here. Thank you.
A lot of folks excited about it.
Yeah, they should.
Hey, how are you?
And again, for those online, you're also able to answer this question in written format via the.
Sorry to interrupt. Do we have audio on the remote? I'm getting texts.
Yes, it just came through, Chair Randolph.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification. That's important. People missed all the wonderful audio we had prior to that coming back online, but we're going to go ahead with the second prompt now. So I'll let people access via their phones. Again, you can use a QR code, scan that to get to the site. You can join by the web or text. And we'll give folks a few minutes here, see what the responses are, maybe identify some themes, and then take some verbal commentary following that. Apologies to those on the Zoom missing out on the audio, but pretty good to go here with this prompt. Some shout outs to some existing programs: Clean Vehicle Rebate Program, Clean Cars for All, tax credits, scrappage, provide indirect source rule, focus on public transit, of the comments here, charging pilots. All right, so I'll continue to let these come in. I'll try to be monitoring the written comments here. And now I want to see if anyone wants to make any comments verbally here with the microphones. We can pass the microphone around. Anything people want to expand on that they've written here, anything that they don't or can't write here and would rather just verbalize, questions, comments. So we'll open it up. Got a hand in the front here on the left.
Hello, thank you again. This is Angelina from Aura Planning. I would like to see programs that have more open opportunities for requirements and are more impact oriented. By that, I mean that if you say, come up with an idea that we can be this much, let's say $1 million, we can provide transportation for 1,000 people in this community. I think that would be gives more opportunity for innovation rather than saying that these are the costs that are qualified, costs that are not qualified, and you keep trying to make the program that you have to fit those requirements. I know that sometimes you have to have that, but it would be great if you have other programs that just ask for ideas and also, as I mentioned before, it would be great if you can please let everyone to provide their ideas and not make them specifically for only nonprofit organizations. Thank you so much.
You. Other comments? Yeah, in the front here.
Thank you, Ali, with the EV guide. We've heard today both from SMUD as well as one of my colleagues here in Sacramento who are building out mobility hubs and linked those mobility hubs typically linked to both local transit for first last mile solutions as well as community car share programs. And here's what we know to be true. And again, I commend CARB, the governor, and state leadership in investing enormous amounts of money to jumpstart these initiatives. Here's what we know, though. These initiatives, and Angela knows this very well, these initiatives are about 5-year funding, for 5 years. And after 5 years, if your local program, your nonprofit, or your local government hasn't figured out a way to sustain these programs, by and large, the history has shown us that these programs go away. So what we'd like to see is CARB incentivize and or prioritize investments in projects that have sort of bundled funding approaches or funding stacks. An example of this would be you build a mobility hub. The mobility hub, by and large, is connected to a larger renewable energy infrastructure that is generating revenue. Those revenues are then being reinvested in ensuring that the low-cost, zero-emissions vehicles are accessible to ridership through way of a mobility equity fund and or any other sort of instrument. But the key here is when you put the dollars on the street, and we know that the dollars are going to exhaust in 5 years, what are we doing to measure that there is a program or a funding mechanism that's sustainable beyond grant funding for that 5 years? And we think it's a bundled approach with renewable energy infrastructure.
Thank you for that comment. From the panel, want to respond? Other hands? I did notice a number of comments around indirect source rule that also came up in the first prompt. Anyone want to maybe discuss it a bit more length? What kind of indirect source rule, what kind of authority, and how that might operate? Or other comments as well. But anything else? Okay, I think we're going to close up shop. Well, I see one hand there in the back. Otherwise, we'll close up shop on this question and go to the next one. But yeah, take your comment.
Hi, thank you. Brett Zuner with the Foundation for California Community Colleges. I guess just echo, I think we talked about it a lot in the first prompt, but the workforce development aspect and maybe thinking about incorporating workforce development into every incentive program. Yeah, I think well, I don't want to plug like any specific books, but I was reading a book called Abundance, and they were talking about how if you incentivize things, but there's not a high supply, it doesn't really work. So you do need supply side, and I don't know that we're in a position to give money to manufacturers, for example, or things of that nature directly, but investing in the workforce and just creating that capacity is a way to increase yeah, just the other side of the equation, so to speak. And it is a way to invest in communities, because if you're doing the workforce development in a local community, I think it helps build trust that way too, because you're investing in the people there, not just with the EV, but kind of the full service? Like, is there going to be someone to fix the charger? Is there going to be someone to work on their car in their community? So I think that that would be a good thing to think about embedding into existing programs.
Curious if you have any examples of workforce development programs that you think have been successful that might be a good model?
Well, I'll plug the smog check referee program that we do with BAR. And actually, Suzanne was saying that she was a smog check referee intern years ago. And yeah, and I think that that model of existing workforce training that we do have, and the community colleges are local institutions for sure. And then the zero emission assurance program that CARB is doing right now, I think that that is going to be a great, opportunity to see what happens, because that is to invest in people who bought used EVs through these incentive programs. They now have the ability to go through ZAP to get the car fixed if it has like battery related issues, for example. So there is definitely a workforce component there, just alone with the repairing of something. So I think there'll be a lot of data there and insight that maybe can inform future programs for sure.
Thank you. Comment here in the front or middle front.
Hey, Martha Miller with the California Association of Port Authorities. I know that we have on the 31st another meeting that will be probably more appropriate and focused, but given the topic of ISR has come up, I would be remiss if I didn't just point out and just really urge serious caution in moving forward with a concept like that, given that there is so many complications with local air districts that have been working on this issue for quite some time, whether it be South Coast or the MOU that the Port of San Diego just did proactively. There's a lot of work that's going on in this space. And I think everyone also knows that the legislature has looked at this issue and hasn't been able to come to a resolution. There's pending legislation. So having, kind of regulatory action come in the midst of all of this hard work that's been going on for a very long time in earnest with stakeholders that, have been very committed to shared goals for a very long time would be hugely problematic and very complicated for our supply chain. We are dealing with a lot right now, given what's going on with the federal government and the administration. There's a lot coming down. There's a lot of unpredictability. So I would just really urge caution and really thinking about the entire supply chain, every link in the chain, and what the impacts could be on the ports and then the broader supply chain if we looked at a rule like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Get the feedback on indirect source rule, and if anyone else wants to weigh in on that or any other program, give you an opportunity now before we close up here. All right, let's see. There, and then we'll go to the back.
So just to put in one more potential policy solution that could be relevant, especially for air quality. We are an international organization, so again, Josh Miller from ICCT, and we have programs actively in Europe and in China, and we've seen there that zero emission
Can you speak more into the mic?
Zero emission zones can be incredibly effective for driving rapid electrification, especially in the truck segment. So for example, in the Netherlands, there are a number of cities that recently required that vehicles be zero emissions in order to be able to enter a certain area of the city. And what we saw is a dramatic up to 80% ZEV sales share now for light and medium duty trucks in that area. There are also purchase incentives that help make that possible. But zero emission zones are something that California could seek to engage with cities and figure out a roadmap and really explore that opportunity.
All right. Yeah. There you go.
Hi, Noel Crisostomo, not affiliated with my current employer, but previously at the CPUC and Energy Commission working on charging infrastructure. I'd suggest that programs lean into momentum of domestic manufacturing that had been set up during the prior administration to build a US workforce for battery supply chain, EV charging, and everything in between. In order to reduce the exposure to tariffs, build workforces, and increase energy security along the lines of the administration's priorities. So finding areas that allow California to spread the burden of financing the transition with federal tax credits like 45X, which continues for the battery supply chain, and 30C, which will continue for the next roughly year, is a way of enabling deployment without immediate state level action.
Thank you. Yeah, thoughts here from the panel? Okay, let's do another hand up there.
Sorry, I missed the beginning of this session, but in case it hasn't been mentioned, congestion charging is an idea that I think we're ripe for, and we've seen the success in New York, and encourage regulators to be thinking about that.
I'll just quick response to that. That would be in the bucket of legislative solutions. So as folks are thinking about their ideas, they can also be thinking about things that are within our authority, but also things that they might want to ask the legislatures.
Okay, any other comments on this prompt? We'll move ahead to the next one, but I want to thank folks for their input here. Next prompt, which is what incentive programs other than financial support, and we did cover financial support-based incentives, the earlier prompt. What incentive programs other than financial support could encourage more adoption of zero-emission vehicles and related equipment? Some of these ideas here may have come up in the earlier session, but this is an opportunity now to focus on this specific prompt. So I'll let you all use your phone QR code. Those at home or in the office remotely can respond as well via Zoom. Instructions here, just in case people. Some non-monetary here, education, access to HOV, parking priority, they're somewhat financial in nature, but that's okay. Although we do really want to focus on non-financial incentives for this prompt if possible. Emission zones like we just heard about, just discussed. Bulk purchasing. All right, does anyone want to comment via the microphone here in response to this prompt here? A lot about outreach, zero emission zones, access to priority lanes, things like that. Ready to raise hands if you want to add anything. Let people, I know people are still typing as well. Got a hand up here. Gentleman there on the.
Good afternoon, Daryl Little. On behalf of CalSTAR, just want to reiterate something that already popped up there. I'm just renewing the HOV lane access for ZEVs through the extending of the CAF program.
Anything else people want to add? Yeah, hand up right here.
Hey guys, I really appreciate it. I do and I don't intend on sounding like a broken record here. But in terms of EV adoption, particularly in the communities that I'm focused in across California, are disadvantaged and underserved communities. I cannot emphasize enough the cost barrier for our nonprofits and our local governments who are putting your dollars to good use now by launching these community EV car share initiatives. And again, the excessive cost of insurance. So the idea of a state mandated pooled insurance program that community mobility operators, as well as primarily nonprofit and or public sector entities can purchase insurance from would go a long way in accelerating the north of $100 million that CARB has already invested in these communities across the board. And I'd say CARB has done a great job in hearing feedback from awardees through a number of channels, whether it's the Clean Mobility Options program, the STEP program, and or any of the numerous working groups within sort of those organizations. We've continuously voiced that the challenge is the cost of insurance. So anything we can do, non-monetary, but anything we can do to move towards some sort of pooled managed insurance for those nonprofit car share programs would accelerate adoption through your programs. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to take a moment to go back to the last comment about the HOV lanes, which I think folks know is a creature of federal authority, and it expires in September of this year. And we've been talking about regulatory or legislative, but I think it's also important to remind folks, hey, call your federal representatives, because there are things that the federal government might be able to do that aren't as heavy of a lift as, giving us back our ACC2 authority. So I really encourage folks to think about those opportunities as well, to advocate for continued access to HOV lanes. And I made a note to myself to follow up with our friends at the transportation agencies to understand whether or not there's any authority we have around the toll lanes. Specifically, whether there are any, if that is sort of subsumed into the federal HOV lane authority, or if there are any opportunities either contractually or through state action that we might be able to do to continue to incentivize price breaks for zero emission vehicles.
Did notice that we get a few comments around just sort of generally making existing programs more efficient. Wondering if people have any more detail on that or examples of efficient programs that could be a model that could be transferred to some of the other programs or potentially new programs. End up here.
Thank you. I was one of those people that asked for more efficiency. When the funding is provided for, let's say, grant money for programs, and awardees implement the programs, there is no way to really evaluate their success rate and incentivize them for future programs. So if I work with a nonprofit and we implement a program, as long as we meet the requirements, we are fine, but you don't come back to us and say, compared to other ones that implemented this program, you were like 50% efficient. And that would affect your score next time that you are asking for more funding. I think this is an easy way that actually you save money. So give the funding to those that know how to implement the program successfully. Thank you.
Hand up here again.
Thanks. Yeah, so under a clean, oh boy, can't see. Hold on. Just want to check my notes here. Yeah, so under the Advanced Clean Cars 2, CARB has a really innovative program where it essentially offers a 25% discount for car share programs that are purchasing cars from OEMs. OEMs who offered that 25% discount received a higher credit multiplier towards their regulatory compliance. And so, again, in terms of financial incentives, anything that we can do to expand that program to other OEMs beyond the less than handful of OEMs that currently are engaged in that program would be great.
Thank you. All right, other comments on this? We've got a lot of good written feedback here. Yeah, right there.
This might be an incentive program for manufacturers than consumers, but technical assistance for OEMs to implement power control systems on board their vehicles so that they can essentially overload but safely their electrical panels without causing grid upgrades, which can overcome supply chain constraints and utility interconnection challenges. So assistance for OEM power control system implementation.
Thank you. Other comments?
Hello, Michelle Canales with Union of Concerned Scientists. Just wanted to add on in terms of advanced clean cars. Should the board move forward with a future regulation, you could consider early action credits, similar to ACC2, that could incentivize the adoption of ZEVs prior to any adoption of a future rule. Thank you.
And another comment there in the middle back.
Thank you. Definitely want a +1 on the outreach, engagement, education piece for sure. And then when it comes to our more rural communities, or they call it WUIs or wildland urban interface communities from Los Angeles. So definitely that has been top of mind for us down there. But I think maybe bringing in CAL FIRE and other and the forestry folks and plugging into the outreach that they do, especially in rural and in partnership with tribal nations and communities, just around the real concerns people have regarding the safety of the electrical grid and resources. That has come up in outreach that we've done, and I've looked at other reports from others where people are concerned about, if we put more EVs in our community, is that going to put more on the grid? Also with the power shutoffs related to wildfire risk, I think that's probably an area where we could do more, is bring that in and do, I think if there was a little bit of EV competency and education in the already happening outreach around like fire hardening or defensible spaces, that might be a good way, because then we can start having these holistic conversations that show that we have listened to all the feedback and we're integrating it, so people don't get that kind of engagement fatigue or feedback fatigue.
Daryl Little with CalStart again. This may be more so for OEMs and fleet owners, but thinking of using the disclosure laws to highlight good actors in that space to highlight corporate leadership, early adoption.
Thank you. Scott Cox with the Electric Vehicle Charging Association. A non-monetary change we could make on the regulatory side would be revisiting our approach to the weights and measures framework. Our members have indicated there's significant challenges, especially at the county level, with certification delays, a really fragmented compliance process, high testing equipment costs for service agencies. We really would like to see some streamlining and some guidance on certification procedures and some consistent statewide guidance to help break up these bottlenecks and keep the momentum behind infrastructure deployment.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, and we have been in conversations with our sister agencies about that. We have heard that feedback as well around weights and measures. I wanted to circle back on the comment from CalStart. I just wanted to clarify, make sure I understood your comment and also kind of elevate it for other folks. So I think you were talking about the climate disclosure laws. Okay, so CARB, for those of you who don't know, are responsible for implementing SB 253, which is the law that requires companies to make disclosures on an annual basis around their carbon emissions. And so I think your point was to say like that is a potential opportunity to highlight more efficient vehicles or strategies. Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure I understood that.
I also know we got a lot of comments in written format, less so in folks who have had the mic about education, outreach, and wondering if anyone wants to add a little detail there about what kinds of specific, outreach, education, sort of state-based marketing that might be useful to take into consideration.
I will speak right into the mic this time. So just wanted to expand a little bit on the idea of expanding the funding and reach of the key consumer outreach program and education program, which is VELOZ. The public-private nature of that has been really important to its success. And one of the things that we recommend is consideration of expanding that program in California to include additional partners, notably dealerships and local groups, to serve as partners in EV champions.
Thank you. All right, any other thoughts on this question around incentives before we move on to the next prompt? Let's go to the next one. The last sort of formal prompt, and then we'll have a few more targeted questions, and then we'll leave a little time for just open-ended discussion, anything that hasn't been covered yet that people want to bring up. So for this question, what are some of the principles for zero-emission vehicle program design that ensure we don't leave any Californians behind? So principles for program design to make sure we don't leave any Californians behind. Give people a few minutes to type out some responses, and then if anyone wants to add anything verbally. Making it easier to apply for incentives, lower cost charging, directing incentives towards disadvantaged communities, lower and middle income households, ability programs with shared community-led solutions, incentives for used vehicle replacement. We talked about scrappage programs earlier, or an infrastructure, focusing on EV affordability more broadly. All right, so seeing some consistency with the morning discussion, first half of the morning discussion, and some different ideas here. Charging access and multi-unit dwellings, low-income housing, targeting the subsidies incentives. We did hear some of that earlier, but helpful to see that in this, in response to this prompt. I'm going to go ahead and open it up now. If folks have comments they want to make on the microphone. Yeah, question there or comment?
Yeah, good morning. Mars Wu again with the Green Lining Institute. In addition to uplifting what we've already talked about in terms of targeting investments, also want to mention it's really important to build community capacity. So not only, providing investments upfront, but also establishing paths towards wealth building in priority communities across California, trying to move towards community ownership of assets, opportunities to continue building wealth via things like workforce development, small businesses, as was mentioned in the morning. So just wanted to uplift that.
Yeah, thank you. Other comments? Thinking about principles to make sure we don't leave any Californians behind. Up there.
Okay, I didn't want to jump the gun. So I'd like to talk a little bit about infrastructure here. The state has made immense progress on expanding charging infrastructure for light duty especially. The job is not done yet though. Some ideas we have for ensuring that no one is left behind is to continue to complete geographic coverage, especially of DC fast charging and level 2 for destination chargers in rural areas of the state. And of course, continue to expand residential charging access. Everyone should have access to home charging. It's the least burden on the grid. It's the most affordable. So continuing to expand the programs, focusing on multi-unit dwellings and making sure that everyone can get access in some form to a home charger.
Thank you. Good.
Thank you. Sarah Olson with Environmental Defense Fund. Thank you for the opportunity today to be having this very important dialogue. I think from a principles level, we want to stress the importance of CARB looking at solutions that prioritize immediate health benefits and near-term reductions. We know that those will be benefiting the communities that are most impacted by toxic air pollution. I think that these programs could look and policies could take a variety of different forms, from procurement policies that have been raised today, as well as a variety of incentive programs that we've also discussed. We see that CARB really has an opportunity to be weaving incentives in for near-term action across many of its policies. And when we really think about getting equity right, we want to be thinking about making sure we're doing everything we can to be addressing those impacts right now while we make the longer-term changes that we also need to be making.
Comment in the front.
Kasha Hunt with Nossaman. We represent the California Bus Association, and a principle that I think would be helpful is to remember that not all industries are the same, and that, principles and standards applied to one industry or to one manufacturer is very different than it is to another. So small businesses may be more impacted than other businesses based on different standards. The California Bus Association is filled with business owners that own 10 or fewer buses. So therefore, a standard would impact their industry far more than it would for someone else who has many more vehicles, whether it's the zero emission vehicles or others, but those standards impact one type of business more than another.
Thank you. Responses from the panel up here? Any other comments? Yeah, in the back there, middle back.
Sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot, so I encourage other people who haven't held this mic to take it. But I think a principle definitely around the sense of urgency, and especially what I'm seeing right now, like I think we're all a little blindsided by the September 30th federal tax credit going away. I think we thought we at least had until the end of the year. And there's a lot of kind of frantic trying to adapt to that and see how we can, meet people where they're at and pair the incentives we have before that one goes away. But I see it as the federal government, that's what they want us to be reactive and on their turf, right? Like when they're doing all these crazy things and very unpredictably, and I think in some regards, California's taking the bait where, we have these multi-year plans, we've been planning, we have robust funding in some areas. Some areas need more. But I think kind of holding the line and holding ground, so to speak, and really remaining committed, and just having more discernment, I guess, around when we actually do take seriously kind of the clownery that comes out of DC. Because I think if we focus on the circuits too much, we're not going to get the job done. And then we're just reacting to things that are outside of our control instead of focusing on like within our locus of control. So that's just something I've been thinking about a lot lately. Yeah, and I think that it is a principle. And then, also being creative and piloting strategies. So I think in the same kind of relatedly, we want to fund these programs multi-year. So communities, manufacturers, et cetera, know we're committed and know the money's not going to go away. We made that commitment. On the same token, though, maybe more frequently than just annual funding plan review, right? That we pilot new strategies, like maybe tiering incentives based on income within the 225 to 300 FPL, or increasing the scrap value because used car rates have gone up maybe in the last 3 months. I think remaining really dynamic and having more iterative program design that's flexible would be a great approach. And then also it builds trust because all those changes should be informed by community feedback in theory. So it would also show that we're demonstrating it. Because sometimes if someone gives feedback in December, it's like, all right, well, we'll get back to you next November. And that doesn't always land well. So thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Yeah. No. On the right-hand side there.
Thanks very much. Atit Kimmelman from NRDC. Just, I'm sure this is already on your minds, but as we balance the need for urgency in taking action with, robust timelines for community engagement and involvement, I think we all appreciate these listening sessions. They were on a very kind of expedited time frame, and we understand the urgency. But I think we've heard from some of our partners that the timelines here make it difficult for those who are maybe being left behind to be able to engage in this process. And I just really want to lift that up as we continue with the urgency to make sure that we have engagement.
Thank you. Any other thoughts here on this prompt? Sure.
Thank you. Scott Cox from EFCA. I wanted to make a quick comment and thank our friends at the California Energy Commission for the great work they do with the Clean Transportation Program. They've really ridden the waves of funding influxes with the climate commitment, and now in the reality, we find ourselves in a more resource-constrained reality. Our membership feels that a more focused approach with larger awards, still existing within the framework to benefit low-income and disadvantaged communities, could give greater flexibility and adding capacity to capacity-constrained sites, and also delivering more meaningful investment in less served areas. With fewer resources to go around, these smaller, more piecemeal, less targeted awards make it very difficult to kind of get things in the ground.
All right. Oh. Comment there on the middle.
A principle for program design for charging infrastructure might try to pursue the maximum number of barrels reduced or displaced per dollar spent as a unifying factor across all the different agencies that might be investing in charging infrastructure, CEC, CARB, PUC, and all of the local agencies who might be collecting fees or other revenue sources to fund those programs. I think enabling that, avoiding the balkanization of charging infrastructure programs is important to Evka's point around access and speed to market. In addition, speaking to your NRDC, or Community Foundation for Community Colleges, the point around managing the change in outlook from the federal government. I think, yes, leaning into the things that you can control in terms of acquiring vehicles by June 30 of this year under the tax credits instead of placing them in service is a deliberate act by Congress that folks should lean into while those funds are available. And again, by June 30 of 2026, taking advantage of the 30C tax credit, which is targeted towards low-income Americans, for $1,000 per charger at home, inclusive of battery storage, which will gain another $1,000, and then public charging infrastructure for up to $100,000 per item, and $100,000 per item of battery storage can assist with reaching infrastructure in hard to install markets. It's worth emphasizing that that tax credit does cover grid upgrades as long as the grid upgrade is dedicated for infrastructure and fueling infrastructure and not other loads that are on site. This can avoid having to wait for FHWA's authorization of additional funds from future appropriation years for that project or CFI, and can avoid any new administrative requirements waiting for those funds.
Thank you. Yeah. Other comment in the back.
And me again. This comment more so comes from the perspective of the Clean Cars for All programs and DCAP, but the DCAP program is doing a kind of needs-based design, and I think tying in what I said earlier about piloting strategies, that is like an example of that. And it's been brought up today, just the reality of, you know, we aren't going to have as much money as we've had in the past. And we want the money to go to the highest need and for it to be, you know, used in the most responsible way. So I think that necessitates needs-based, but I think we need to make that more explicit because, you know, I think there's total agreement, especially from leadership, that these should be equity-focused programs, equity-driven programs. And you can't really do that without a needs-based model, but I think there's a lot more opportunity with needs-based and things we can pilot. And we don't want to create like a huge administrative burden and have the cost be so high to like examine every application. But with AI and other, you know, new technology, maybe there's ways to streamline application processing, but that really takes into account people's situations and the best of our ability, make sure the money doesn't go to someone who already owns a car, you know, has a lot of wealth, but maybe low income, and they're getting these cars. Is that really who the program's for? But from a program implementation perspective, trying to figure that out is very hard because, you know, we need certain documents, reviewing them. And so I don't have an answer there, but I think there is something there for sure within the community of program administrators to think about, you know, how do we build on this needs-based model and go further and really try to make the dollars stretch. Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to thank you for that comment. We're going to move on from this section in just a minute, but I just want to check to see if there's anyone who hasn't spoken yet who wants to weigh in here. So this is your moment. Of course, the whole thing is your moment, but this is particularly your moment. All right. Seeing no hands, I'm going to go ahead and move on from this question. Again, this isn't the end of the equity discussion by any means, but just in terms of kind of formal prompts for all of you. We don't have anything else teed up here on the screen, so I just have a series of questions, and then I'll see if the panelists up here have any questions that they would like some input on from all of you. First question is just if there are any policy gaps that you've identified that would be really important to raise up here to help ensure that California can respond to what the federal government is doing right now and maintain momentum. So any gaps, and similarly, any technology gaps as well. Are there anything that you think should be taken into account in terms of what the state could do to help address any of those gaps, either on the policy side or the technology side? So I wanted to make sure that question was out there. Is this something that I know that folks working on this directive are grappling with? Yeah, hand up there in the middle, and then we'll go over to the right.
Rocky Fernandez with the Center for Sustainable Energy. I'm not quite sure if it answers your question, but there is something that does need to be addressed, and it's kind of a small and medium duty fleet charging, public charging. Right now, I think the Energy Commission has identified we need 5,500 chargers between now and 2030. We're now at about 220 that are operating. So we have a huge gap to fill in a very short amount of time. There's some in production, in the process. We did have a robust transportation electrification program that we were running through the Public Utilities Commission that has been paused. And for ratepayer concerns, and that's understandable given the conversation in Sacramento. So that does need to be filled in somewhere through either one of our other agencies or some other program, because that gap is still huge while this is on pause. And so we wanted to make sure that we identified that. I will say that some of the ratepayer funded investor-owned utility programs are moving forward, but that's not exactly helping. Oh. Last point was, yes, we're still doing the IOU programs that are ratepayer funded. So that's not helping with the affordability challenge, but we do need to find long-term solutions for small and medium duty fleets on the charging side publicly. Thank you.
For that, I don't know if Jennifer Califoot's still here. Anything on the Energy Commission side, or if any of the panelists want to weigh in on that charging infrastructure question.
Comment briefly. I think that concern is one that's really important, and that we're looking broadly across the program, specifically under Caltrans, to see if there are ways that our rights of way or our existing pools of funding can be allocated to charging infrastructure, or to improving the speed with which charging infrastructure can be installed in accessible and useful locations within our existing authorities. So if you have ideas about how to maximize those kinds of approaches, or how they could be best targeted to try to be effective in the right places, the right formats to be useful to small and medium duty fleets, we'd be really interested in that.
Yeah, this is Judd Califoot with the CEC. I'm still here. Definitely took note of that comment. We are looking at opening some solicitations on that side, so hopefully more on that to come soon. And also taking the comment on sort of focusing on larger awards. I think that's something that we've been thinking about it as well too. So want to take that back also. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. Question there on the right. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Tom Ashley with Volterra. A lot of gaps out there. We're not going to be able to fill them all, but a couple that I would highlight in this context. One is the loss of the federal commercial vehicle tax credit, which I think is particularly impactful for commercial fleets in the light and medium duty space. So I think there's a real opportunity and frankly a need for California to be thoughtful about how to bridge that gap. Also want to acknowledge that there's an ongoing gap, not just in California, but beyond, in terms of infrastructure flexibility, or excuse me, infrastructure incentive flexibility for fleets and other types of users of electric vehicles to be able to use infrastructure incentives to access infrastructure that may already exist. And I would just acknowledge that in California, there's a pretty significant thread of discussion around infrastructure incentives for public versus private charging facilities. And I think thinking about infrastructure incentives to accessing existing infrastructure can help ameliorate kind of this public-private question. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, other responses, thoughts about policy gaps, technology gaps? Yeah.
There was a comment on the screen earlier around the need for coordinated industrial policy. I think leaning into the inertia that we do not know how large that inertia is from the Inflation Reduction Act, which had mobilized billions of dollars in the EV and critical mineral supply chain, is very important for California to address the concerns that electric vehicles are foreign technologies that will decrease energy security. And so leaning in with states that have made those investments and manufacturers across the country beyond the Section 177 states will be important to build that supply base, both in California and elsewhere, so that American workers can support this transition. In addition to the industrial policy that's coordinated across states, I think making references to traceability standards to improve battery transparency so that California is building responsible supply chains and supporting OEMs as they transition their supplies will be supportive of a change in the tone that EVs are being used nationally.
Let's see. Anyone who hasn't gone yet, which is great. Appreciate the multiple comments, but just trying to see if anyone who hasn't spoken has a chance to weigh in. So we got a hand up over here on the left.
Just a quick comment. Policies that promote shared use and shared infrastructure, I think, are missing. I think mobility is about clean mobility, not specifically clean car ownership. So specifically for low-income communities that we work with, if we can have, for example, e-bike program that is for shared e-bike for the communities, or shared car, not just car share program, ride share programs. We see a lot of success. At the end of the day, the goal is to for people to be able to move around. So yeah, and also shared infrastructure, as someone mentioned, would be a great idea.
You. Any other comments on this, on policy gaps, technology gaps? In the back there.
Also, coordinating the EV adoption through the incentive programs that we have with the CEC's multifamily. I just kind of had that thought that we have all this data around who's getting these EVs through CARB-funded programs, and we do offer people money to install a charger at their home if they own it or rent it. You know, they have to have all the clearance to do it, but that's a specific type of person with access to that. And then there's the charge card, but you need chargers to use the charge card at. But just a thought that maybe in the way like the multifamily's done, if that landlord or whoever it is or business owner serves someone who went through, or multiple people who went through one of these programs, maybe give priority to that, because it would show the coordination on the state. That would look really good. And also then that person is kind of a spokesperson in a way. They're gonna have a better experience with the car that we, the state, like gave the money to get, and it demonstrates, okay, now there's a charger and this person went through it, maybe I would get one now. I think that would help. And then also keeping in mind that those incentive programs are going to people in disadvantaged communities, rural communities, tribal communities, people under 300 FPL. So it does fit that needs-based and equity model too. And it's just another data set, I think, to focus investment on the multifamily and the shared EV infrastructure.
Thank you for that. Yeah, another comment here.
Good afternoon now, since it's right afternoon. David Rentschler, City of Fairfield. So we're on technology and policy, and so in the fleet industry, when you have charging behind the fence where it's not publicly accessible, it's for our vehicles only, we have a problem And I've been working with manufacturers of chargers, as well as many of the other fleet managers. And that is when there's a power interruption, whether it's a glitch for half a second or 5 minutes or longer, the charge session stops and will not restart with level 3, and almost all of the level 2s won't restart. There's only one company that I've worked with that has been able to get it to work on level 2. That's important for our fleets. So if there's any type of a glitch in the middle of the night, in order to restart that session, someone would have to go to that location with keys, unlock the vehicle, have the appropriate card to make the charger restart, to restart the session. Now, CARB regulates retail and protects consumers on types of payment methods and things like that on the retail side. We've been trying to work with the OEMs. They're not changing. They're not working with us and coming up with a system that'll restart the session for us. Maybe CARB can do something in a policy setting like they did on the retail to help protect those fleets that have the behind the fence charger where only our vehicles can charge, because this is going to be a real problem as we start all of our fleet vehicles start getting electrified. We're electrifying more and more, that they won't be ready in the morning when the crews come in to take them. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I actually appreciated it from the fleet perspective. That wasn't one of the questions I wanted to ask, was if there are folks who own or manage fleets, preferably on the light duty side, since that's what we're talking about, but it could be broader than that. If you have recommendations for what a top action could be to help make that shift to zero emission feasible and easier. I don't know if we have any folks who fit that description in the room. If not, that's okay. But all right. Any other thoughts here? I'm going to see if the panelists have any questions, but just any final thoughts here on this last question.
Thanks very much. I guess two thoughts. One, I mean, these have come up before, but just to reiterate, one is the VGI, just I think it's a gap in the sense that it's not really reality yet, and it's something that could really be beneficial to the whole transition. The other is, and perhaps this is unhelpful, but a truly affordable EV, right? We have a dearth of those at the moment. There are some on the market, but I think that should be our North Star in some ways on the light duty side, right? A truly affordable EV that will really allow us to expand this market. Not sure that there's too much I can say that's helpful there, other than that should be our North Star.
Thank you. All right. Well, I'm going to just open up for the panel now. Any questions from the panelists up here that you would love to get some input on or thoughts? Yeah.
I don't have any additional questions. I heard a lot of unique discussion suggestions that I hadn't heard before, which I think is great. And a lot of the issues that were raised, we definitely are continuing to work on. But I appreciated kind of some of the iterative comments on ways that we can be even more creative and proactive in dealing with things like infrastructure and providing vehicles to low income and rural customers. So appreciated a lot of those comments as well.
I would echo that. There were definitely a lot of creative ideas here today, and also challenges that hadn't surfaced before me before. So I appreciate hearing those. And I would definitely welcome any additional input either today, now, or in a written form afterwards, focusing in on some of the charging infrastructure challenges specifically. We're looking not only at things that would be improved with additional funding, but also process improvements. Because we know we can have all these great programs with dollars attached to them, but if you actually can't get a permit, get metal in the ground, and navigate all the programs and processes that exist to make those available, then it's not useful. And so if there are ideas you have or just challenges you want to surface along those lines, those would be really useful to us.
Just wanted to also add briefly, I appreciated the comments about making sure that there is opportunity for community groups and individuals to participate in this process. So I just wanted to mention, first of all, we do have we have the session in Long Beach, but we also have a remote session. And do you have the date and time?
Yeah.
It's Monday, right?
It's the 29th.
The 29th
Yeah.
from
5:30 to 7:30.
5:30 to 7:30. But also, more importantly, this is not the end of the process. We are going to be providing an initial set of recommendations to the governor pursuant to his request to move expeditiously around responding to the executive order. But, we will continue to take comment. We have a docket open if people want to submit written comments. But also, I think this work is going to end up kicking off next steps. We're going to end up having workshops around what the next sort of iteration of our vehicle regulations will look like. There will continue to be outreach and engagement. And so we are already thinking about how we can broaden that outreach and ensure that community organizations and, the environmental justice communities in our 617 program are also aware of this, and just other outreach ways that we can bring folks into this conversation. So we're absolutely committed to doing that going forward. This is going to be a long slog. And so we want to make sure we get as much continued feedback and engagement as possible.
Any other questions or reflections from the panel? Yeah. So, we'll just kind of open it up now. So if anyone has any comments they haven't had a chance to make, we'll go ahead. Those questions.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to interrupt comments from the board. I just wanted to ask a question because I wanted to verify the Long Beach workshop. That's on the 31st. Did that change date?
That's the
on the
same date. So the
29th
29th is online only. So
Okay.
it's, yeah, so we still have the Long Beach one on the 31st, and then we have the 29th from 5:30 to 7:30.
Because there's also the CEC workshop on the IEPR commission workshop on firm zero emission resources and hydrogen. So I just wanted to make sure that people were also aware of those. There could be some overlap there with both workshops.
That may be scheduled, may overlap with the.
Oh, staff is raising their hand. The one on the 29th. Okay, just to clarify, the CEC workshop on the 29th is during the day. Our workshop is at 5:30, and it's remote. Okay, sorry. Any other comments from the dais?
I would just echo my colleagues in terms of everyone. Thank you for sticking with us and for all the insightful perspective. And would just reiterate that the role that GoBiz plays, I think, within this ecosystem is helping connect business around incentives or resources you might be eligible for. The gentleman in the back that had the important comments about his small fleet and being able to look at where incentives might apply to him. That's the type of work we do, is connecting businesses directly with agencies that are overseeing some of these programs, working with local officials and governments on issues around permitting. So we are here to help. That also includes things like incentives, like the employment training panel for the gentleman that had been bringing up some of the components around workforce development as it relates to fleet management and other aspects of ensuring that we have a talented pipeline of engineers and folks that are prepared to help manage our infrastructure, but also the vehicles themselves. So we are here as a resource, especially for industry. So just want to make sure that folks know to reach out to GoBiz. We're always glad to support and see where we can connect business on, again, the incentives or resources that may be applicable. So thank you.
Any, yeah, go ahead. Final questions, comments?
Yeah, just a quick question. Thank you so much for your time in this session today. Just in terms of procedural question, I was wondering for the Long Beach and virtual sessions, if it would be at all possible to provide like a more granular agenda in advance, perhaps with some of the prompts listed.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And we got a similar request after the Fresno meeting, just to put these prompts out there so that folks can be thinking about this in advance. Unfortunately, the website was not cooperative, so we weren't able to do that ahead of this meeting, but we do hope to be able to do that ahead of the Long Beach one. We'll basically be asking these same questions. And, by the way, it's not that these are the only issues that are of interest. We just wanted to be able to kind of start the discussion and try to tackle things in somewhat of a orderly way, given the wide range of issues and recommendations that are implicated with this topic. So that was really the thinking, not that anything beyond those prompts is not of interest. It definitely is, but we'll definitely take that comment into account. We'll try to make sure we can preview the questions ahead of the next one. So thank you for that. Yeah, other comments, questions?
Thank you. And thank you for your time today. I had just one more process question for the virtual session, since I know that's a kind of a catch-all and it's covering a wide range of topics. Is it going to be the same format of a couple of key questions that folks are responding to, or what will that structure look like?
I'm not actually going to be facilitating that one, so I don't know, Andrew, if you.
So that session is just a general comment intake. So there will not be facilitated conversation. We're not going to have prompts. We'll cover, give the audience a little bit of background context setting, but that is going to be more of a general, your more typical comment intake period. And to the prior question, we do now have the prompts from today and Long Beach's session now on the website. So,
thank you, Andrew, for that. Yeah, any other questions, procedural, or comments, final thoughts substantively that we haven't gotten to?
So apologies for not introducing myself earlier. My name is Juan Contreras, and I'm with the Hydrogen Fuel Cell Partnership. One of the things I did want to share with y'all in the next several days, there will be a release of a medium and heavy duty task force white paper, along with a CalREX recommendation around light, medium, and heavy duty hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles. We believe that both in order for battery electric vehicles and the ZEV mandates to succeed, both technologies are very complementary to one another and need each other in order for the state of California to continue to succeed and be the innovator in advance on fuel cell electric vehicle innovation. So thank you again for all your support. And we're happy to help out wherever we can and be able to provide additional feedback before the August 11th deadline.
Appreciate that. And again, if you didn't get your thoughts in, or you after this meeting, you think to yourself, whoops, I wish I had said this, you do have those opportunities at the July 29th meeting. And then, as I mentioned at the outset, if you go to the ZEV forward page on the Air Resources Board website, you could submit your written comments that way. And we're also saving the comments that came through the poll questions that we sent. And as I mentioned, I recorded this interview, recorded this meeting so that we can take that input into account, or the agency staff can take that input into account. So I'm going to go ahead and move to adjourn. I just want to thank all the agency folks who are here. I want to thank Andrew Martinez, his team, for helping to do a lot of work behind the scenes to get this going. And I just want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to provide some very helpful guidance, input, thoughts for consideration, and look forward to continuing this process in Long Beach and online. And just want to thank you again for making the time, and we hope to stay in touch. So thanks a lot. Drive safely or travel safely, however you're getting home.